Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Tales of Herding God Part 254 based on novel. So let's start. My God. Qin Mu's gaze was in a daze. Looking at the incomparably terrifying sight, he muttered and said, "This is indeed refining a treasure, but we just don't know what kind of treasure it is. It might be numerous times more terrifying than the crimson light heaven suppression floor when completed." Yang Jingjing said, "We already can't go over from here. If we go from here, we will die if we aren't careful." Qin Mu nodded his head. The sight was too terrifying, and it even pierced through Supreme Emperor Heaven. If they tried to barge through, they would be turned into ash by the treasures. Who made these treasures? They look like they are about to be completed. He was bewildered, and he instructed the dragon Qin to go out from the moon well. He thought to himself, "Come to think of it, there are so many strange treasures under the great ruins. Under God-broken mountain range, an incomparably huge divine knife rests, and it is no less than 100,000 miles from north to south. And now there's such a terrifying galaxy, and divine weapons are everywhere in this galaxy. Star Sea should have been left behind by strong practitioners of founding emperor era, otherwise, God Zi Qing wouldn't have planted the sun well and the moon well there. However, the Star Sea was about to finish, so why hadn't anyone retrieved it? If we take a detour around Supreme Emperor Heaven and Luofu Heaven, we will probably take close to a month to reach the sun well." The dragon Qin flew out of the moon well, and when they reached outside, they flew towards the broken cliff. It was still daytime, and there was no light coming from the broken cliffs. Only when it was night time would there be light. There were originally two roads that people could pass through the broken cliffs, and they were flying bridges that were paved from the top of the cliff to the bottom of the cliff, making it easier to travel. However, when the big red Qin carried Qin Mu over, he had seen that Supreme Emperor Heaven destroyed the two bridges. Yet, someone fixed the two bridges. Qin Mu was astonished, and he made the dragon Qin slow down. There was a huge hole on the back of Supreme Emperor Heaven. Outside the hole, many girls were hurrying to and fro, fixing the foundation of the bridge. Meanwhile, at the entrance of the hole, numerous square rocks grew legs to walk out orderly. Yang Jingjing has never seen such a strange incident before, and she couldn't help being astonished. Qin Mu said with a smile, "This is the divine art of West Earth. I know who is trying to open a tunnel through Supreme Emperor Heaven." He let the dragon Qin descended, and when the female divine arts practitioners saw him coming over, they were surprised and delighted. They shouted into the cave, saying, "The one in charge, the son-in-law is here." Qin Mu's face turned slightly red, and he explained to Yang Jingjing, "The person inside is definitely Formation Master He, one of the three masters of West Earth. She's an extremely strong woman who is unmatched in her formation skills. Yes, she's the number 3 in the world for formation skills." "They are talking nonsense, as I'm not the son-in-law of the He family. They have the tradition of visiting marriage, but I didn't attend. I had only gone to West Earth to help Nai Kuei seize her position back." As he was speaking, a gust of fragrance assaulted his nostrils as a woman flew into his embrace with a smile. "Darling, you are here." Qin Mu was helpless, and a cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He let him go and said with a smile, "Look at you, all frightened like this. Young lady, he's not my darling, don't be scared." Yang Jingjing had a solemn face, and she didn't say a word. She just stared at her. Qin Mu said with a smile, "You have given me a scare. Sister Yi, it's your He family, who has received orders this time to create a tunnel through Supreme Emperor Heaven. The Emperor issued a decree to let our He family of West Earth fix the road first before opening up a tunnel to connect East Earth and West Earth." He smoothed the hair on her temples, and she tried to wipe away her sweat. The Emperor has granted us the black tortoise bead and dispatched all the experts of our He family. We borrowed the power of the black tortoise bead to slice the mountain rocks and let them walk out by themselves. These mountain rocks will then mend the bridge. Look at the bridge pier over there. If we didn't have the black tortoise bead, I wouldn't have such humongous magic power and sense. Qin Mu turned to look back and exclaimed in admiration. Below the bridge pier of the two flying bridges was actually mountains giants that were holding up the bridges with their shoulders. The mountains giants were lined up from shortest to tallest, and they used their shoulders to lift the flying bridges, allowing the surface of the bridge to be paved smoothly. The tallest mountain giant was likely over 100,000 feet. Qin Mu exclaimed in admiration and said, "When compared to clan treasure of the influential families in West Earth, they aren't inferior by much." Suddenly, a woman shouted loudly, "Formation Master, the sky is about to turn dark. Let's go to the closest village to hide first." Yang Jingjing suddenly said, "No need for that, I'm here, so you guys don't have to worry about the invasion of darkness." He was slightly stunned. She took a long look at her and not long later, the sun set. Qin Mu immediately looked towards the cliff, and he saw darkness spewing out from the cracks on the cliff. The darkness poured out like a flood and instantly washed them over. When that kind of darkness encountered Supreme Emperor Heaven, it made it seem as though Supreme Emperor Heaven didn't exist, and it just passed through Supreme Emperor Heaven, sweeping through the great ruins quickly. Everyone gathered beside Yang Jingjing, and the girl was like a small sun that emanated intense divine light to block the darkness. No matter how the darkness rushed at her, she was immovable. Yang Jingjing gave He a look of power, and he gave a slight smile, but her heart was crawling. This girl is a god, and she's also so protective. I probably can't get close to him anymore. Qin Mu stared at the wall, and darkness completely poured out from the cliff. Suddenly, rays of bright light shone out and landed on the back of Supreme Emperor Heaven. The rays of bright lights were coming from the cracks on the cliffs. As I've guessed, the darkness is coming out from those hidden worlds. When night falls in the great ruins, those worlds would be in the day, and when day breaks in the great ruins, those worlds will be in the night. It's like an hourglass. Qin Mu narrowed his eyes. Numerous lights were coming out from countless cracks on the cliff, and that meant that there was quite a large number of worlds hidden in the broken cliff. Lu Qianzhong, who died in my hands, said that the darkness of the great ruins was laid out by his master, Mingju's black deity. Even though the darkness changes locations at the broken cliff, what exactly is the darkness? He hesitated for a moment. Until then, he didn't know what the darkness of the great ruins was exactly. It was definitely not darkness in the literal sense, and it should be a kind of strange substance. Not only that, when the darkness invaded at night, there would be some strange monsters that would roam the land and swallow up every life form that dared to step into it. When day broke, the monsters would disappear along with the darkness. So where did the monsters come from? Furthermore, after the darkness descended, there would be terrifying devil gods that would roam in the dark. When Qin Mu saved Yu Jiaoqing and the rest of the heavenly feather race at the Sun Well, he had seen monsters climbing out from another space, and that meant that the great ruins had many such entrances. The place with the most entrances was right there, the broken cliff, where the source of the surging river came from. Among them, there must be one that's the true source of the darkness. The source of the darkness is definitely not the worlds that are giving off bright light from the cliff. Darkness is hidden inside the world, so it will definitely not light up. The simplest method is to find the source. Qin Mu quickly took out paper and brush, and he started to draw the outlines of the cliff from his memory. He recorded down every position that was shining and thought to himself, "After day breaks, I just need to compare the places that are shining with the cracks on the cliff. The crack that doesn't shine tonight will be the source of the darkness." When the next day dawned, the darkness withdrew rapidly. No matter if it was east or west, all of the darkness flooded back to the cliff. Everything vanished at the cliff where the source of surging river was. Qin Mu hurriedly flew forward, and was roughly 600 yards away from the cliff. From south to north, he started searching. Twang! The formations in his eyes activated, and instantly, two beams of light that shone onto the mountain. Not a single crack on the mountain could escape his eyes. Qin Mu referred to the light spots he had marked and started comparing them to the cliff. He searched all the way to the north before searching all the way back to the south. After a moment, he surveyed the cliff once again. The cliff was very high, and it was pretty uneven. The complicated terrain made searching to be quite an exhausting task, but it was the simplest and most effective method. He and the rest continued to bore through Supreme Emperor Heaven, and because Yang Jingjing had remarkable abilities, she was invited by He to help. She could melt the rocks in the tunnel and turn them into lava. He then turned the lava into lava giants, and that sped up the work. Yang Jingjing had always been driving the sun ship, and had never done anything like boring a tunnel, so that kind of task was very fresh to her. He had originally used formation skills to slice out a path, and even though her speed was fast, too much magic power had to be exhausted. She wouldn't be able to last long before she had to stop and take a break. With Yang Jingjing's help, she just needed to turn the molten rocks into lava giants and let them walk out of the cave. Therefore, the speed was even faster than before. The most crucial point was still that Yang Jingjing was a god. Her flames could melt the mountain rocks, and also reinforce the tunnel. With this speed, we will be able to bore through Supreme Emperor Heaven in just a few days. He was surprised and delighted. She thought to herself, however, if I drag her lover boy for a visiting marriage, she will definitely go into a fury, and I can't beat her. What a pity. When her lover boy rode a white horse and asked me to lay on his back as we jumped out of the painting, I really wanted to marry him so much. There are no men in West Earth that are as outstanding as him. Found it. Qin Mu's eyes lit up. He finally found a crack that didn't light up the night before. He searched several times, and only then did he finally find the crack. The crack didn't light up, and it lay between two other cracks. A chunk of mountain rock had blocked it at just the right spot. Sister Jing isn't around now, and the dragon Qilin is sleeping. Should I call them over to investigate together? Qin Mu hesitated, but he still decided not to bring them along. Even though Yang Jingjing could defend against the darkness, she was using the divine light from her own body to repel it. The dragon Qilin couldn't deal with the darkness, so he still required Yang Jingjing's protection. Only Qin Mu could blend into the darkness. Thus, it was not important whether he brought them along or not. Fatty dragon, after Sister Jing comes out, just tell her to wait here for me. Qin Mu shouted and flew to the rock in front of the crack. The rock was like a rock door, but more than half of the rock door embedded into the mountain body. If one surveyed from afar, they wouldn't have noticed it, and furthermore, there were even two cracks on its side. He examined the rock door in detail, and there were no words or runes on the rock door. There also wasn't anything like a handle. 7 heavens of heaven's eyes. The divine light on Qin Mu's brows swept past the gate, and he tried to check if there were any unique markings on the inside of the door. However, what disappointed him was that it was just an ordinary door. There were no signs of refining. When he didn't discover anything abnormal, he went to the crack behind the door. It was pitch black in the depths of the crack, and he couldn't see any peculiarity. When he walked in, the crack was very long, and there were also cracks on both sides of the mountain walls. The cracks were all pitch black, and no light escaped out. The divine light in his eyes shone, and he tried to light up the cracks on the wall. However, the divine light from his eyes seemed to be swallowed by the darkness, and he couldn't light up whatever was inside. He stretched out his hands and touched the darkness. Rustling sounds rang out beside his ears. These cracks are the other worlds buried here. If it was daytime in the great ruins, the other worlds buried there should be in the darkness. The source of the darkness is right at the end of this crack. The source of the darkness that buried era after era. I would like to see what's the cause of it. He composed himself and continued walking forward until his figure vanished into the darkness. Qin Mu walked quite a long distance forward and over 2 hours had passed, but there was still no end to the crack. After walking so long, he was getting slightly worried. If it were the other crack, he would enter another world the instant he crossed it, but that crack seemed to be way too long. I'll walk another hour, and if I still can't find the end, I'll return. Just as he thought until there, he suddenly saw a light ahead, and his heart stirred. He hurried forward with quick steps and, from far away, he saw a person lying on a wall holding a lantern in his hand. The lantern was glowing with divine light. Qin Mu stopped and looked around. He activated his heaven's eyes again and surveyed the surroundings. Only when there was no danger did he continue forward and go to the side of that person. It was a god who had died there long ago. He laid his back on the wall, and his eyes were completely out of focus. His expression was also blank. Qin Mu examined the clothes and embroidery of the clothes on his body and thought to himself, he is a god from founding emperor era. The lantern had yet to extinguish, and when its light shone on the god looked translucent. Qin Mu was suspicious and braved himself to pinch the skin of the god. Suddenly, the god deflated and shriveled up, making his clothes and skin pile up on each other. A chill ran up Qin Mu's spine, and his hair flared up. He took several steps back. After a few moments, the clothes rustled and floated up. The skin of the god slowly inflated, as though air was pumping into his skin. Not long later, the god was laying against the wall once more. His flesh and blood have disappeared. His primordial spirit has also disappeared. All his divine treasures, his celestial palaces, they are all emptied out. Qin Mu picked up his courage to walk forth and examine him. He couldn't see what had eaten the god and left only his skin behind. He muttered under his breath, I can learn from the mistakes of my predecessor, and if I know the reason for his death, it might be beneficial for me. What's weird is that without flesh and blood, how is he able to expand back up again? Is there something under his skin? He hesitated for a moment and took out Carefree sword as he tried to slice open the skin of the god. There seemed to be something that was squirming under the skin and defending against Carefree sword, making him unable to pierce through the skin. Qin Mu frowned and remembered the life and death book. He shone it at the god and saw a name appear on the life and death book. The human skin suddenly opened its mouth to let out a blood-curdling scream. Trails of black smoke flew out from his eyes, ears, mouth, and nose before it quickly shriveled up. The black smoke blended into the darkness and vanished. Qin Mu was bewildered, and his heart was beating intensely. What had happened was simply too strange, and he hadn't even encountered such strange things in Fengdu. After a moment, his heartbeat returned to normal. He picked up the lantern and continued to walk forward. Just a short distance later, he saw a huge stone tablet that stood tall, blocking the road in front of him. He raised the lantern, and the light from the lantern scattered gently on the stone tablet. On the stone tablet was a kind of writing he had never seen before. Qin Mu was skilled in numerous languages, and had no trouble recognizing most words. Furthermore, he also has a deep understanding of the reason and logic behind all kinds of languages. However, the language on the stone tablet was a completely new language. What kind of text is this? He gave it some thought and took down the willow leaf on the heart of his brows. He asked gently, Brother, Heaven Duke, Crimson Emperor, do you guys recognize the writing on top? In his third eye, another pupil appeared in his pupil to take a look. I don't. Qin Fengqing's voice rang out. Brother, let me out. I won't eat you. Another eye squeezed over and squeezed Qin Fengqing's eye away. It was the clone of Heaven Duke that didn't have the chance to escape when they passed by Xuandu before. The words on it read Heavenly Yin World. Heaven Duke's voice rang out faintly, and he said, Heavenly Yin World is a world below Xuandu. Even though I give off brightness, and I can light up numerous worlds of all sizes that are around me, there are also places I can't shine on, and that's below my feet. The place below my feet is Heavenly Yin World. Strange, why is the boundary stone of Heavenly Yin World here? By right, it shouldn't be here. Qin Mu asked puzzledly, isn't it supposed to be Yudu that's under Heaven Duke's feet? Yudu is the place where the dead go after death. Heavenly Yin World is a place that has no light. They aren't the same. Heaven Duke was still about to speak when Qin Fengqing's infuriated voice rang out, shouting, shut up, old fogey. If you explain things so clearly, how am I going to trick him and eat him? In Qin Mu's third eye, sounds of an old man getting beaten could be heard. After a moment, the Crimson Emperor's voice rang out. I didn't say anything, why are you beating me? Little brat, do you think I'm afraid of you? I'm the Celestial Emperor of Crimson Light Era. Son of Qin, your brother has torn us into pieces, he's going to escape and eat you up. Quickly cover the willow leaf back. Brother, don't believe them, we are brothers and brothers should help each other. I won't eat you. Shut up, old man. If I get him out and eat him up, I can release you guys. Qin Mu hurriedly put the willow leaf back on and finally regained peace in his eye. Heavenly Yin World. Could the dark substance come from this place? Qin Mu calculated and slowly took a few steps back. He came to the front of the god's skin and shone the lantern on it. The skin of the god really inflated back up as he had expected. Qin Mu put the lantern down and took out the life and death book to shine again. The god opened its mouth again and let out a miserable scream. Black smoke poured out from his orifices, and it quickly shriveled up again. Qin Mu muttered to himself, could this black smoke be the dark substance? He raised his hand and grabbed a bunch of darkness. To others, darkness couldn't be touched, but to him, touching the darkness was like touching sand. However, the sensation was extremely light and almost undetectable. Could Heavenly Yin World be covered in this kind of dark substance? Why would this kind of dark substance invade the Great Ruins and the other worlds? He composed himself and kept the life and death book. He picked up the lantern and, after some thinking, he didn't carry it. Instead, he put the lantern in his Daotai sack. If that kind of dark substance was everywhere in Heavenly Yin World, carrying a lantern and walking about was akin to disaster. He circled around the Heavenly Yin boundary stone, and in front of his eyes was grey. He had come to a strange grey world. Qin Mu looked forward, and he saw the grey mountains and rivers. The ground was also grey, and not far away, there were black shadows that appeared and disappeared unpredictably, likely monsters that came and went like smoke in the darkness. They were hard to detect. Some monsters even circled to the back of a grey tree to size him up sneakily. Qin Mu heard rustling sounds beside his ears again. When those monsters closed in and the darkness flowed, there would be rustling sounds. He walked forward, and even though there were also life forms such as those monsters, it seemed so desolate. However, there were trees, flowers, and even unknown monsters, so if there was just a little bit of light, it might have been different scenery altogether. Even though the monsters were closing on him, they were still a slight distance away, and they didn't dare to approach. It was hard for Qin Mu to see the true faces of the monsters as the area was simply too grey and dark. Suddenly, his heart stirred. He took out a piece of beef from his Daotai sack. Swoosh! The beef in his hand suddenly vanished, as if something gnawed away at it. Qin Mu jumped in shock, and he could only roughly make out a lump of shadow pouncing towards the beef in his hand. He didn't even see what it was. These kind of strange life forms are everywhere, and their speed is beyond imagination. What kind of life form lives in heavenly Yin world? That explained why one couldn't recklessly step into the darkness, as the monsters that were everywhere could pounce over and eat their flesh. Far away, there were still sounds of nibbling. When Qin Mu looked towards the source of the sound, he could faintly see some monsters hiding behind a rock and eating something. He walked forward, and those monsters escaped in a fluster. He still couldn't see what they looked like. The sky was dark and gloomy. Qin Mu turned back and confirmed the direction he had come from, not wanting to walk back in the wrong direction. Only then did he continue forward. Numerous whispers came from the dark, and some monsters gathered together. They seemed to be discussing something, and when they saw him coming closer, they scattered like black sand blown away by a gale. Could the entire heavenly Yin world be as grey as this? Are there no other things? Is the darkness really from this place? Qin Mu searched about, but he couldn't find any useful information. When he finally couldn't resist the urge any longer, he took out the life and death book to shine at one of the monsters. The monster suddenly gave off a miserable scream, and black smoke poured out its body. The monster shriveled up and fell to the ground. This is... Qin Mu's expression changed drastically, and he took a look in a hurry. He saw that the shriveled up monster had transformed into human skin. Like the god he had seen in front of heavenly Yin boundary stone, only skin remained. Qin Mu was bewildered and muttered, could these monsters all be skins? Could there be no true monster? His heart was in chaos, and he didn't know why such an unbelievable situation would appear. After thinking, he immediately walked further away and observed. After a moment, he saw the darkness moving like sand and flowing into the skin. The monster quickly stood up again and disappeared, leaving no trace behind. Qin Mu composed himself, and suddenly turned back on his original route. He came to the front of the boundary stone and bowed. "Senior, sorry for disturbing you." His hands lifted the skin, and he walked into heavenly Yin world again. Coming to heavenly Yin world, the human skin that was lifted by his hands suddenly took off and ran. It vanished without a trace in an instant. As expected. Qin Mu's heart trembled violently. The monsters weren't truly monsters, they were just skins. The skins didn't have any flesh and blood, and once they were taken over by the dark substances, their speed would become unbelievably quick. Once the life and death book shined on them, the dark substances would fly out, and they became empty skins. Why do they have to eat flesh and blood? Qin Mu felt he was a little closer to the truth, but he was still way far from uncovering it entirely. If I want to uncover the truth of the darkness, I will probably have to search for the secret behind heavenly Yin world. He walked forward, and rustling rang out. One monster walked closer to him, and Qin Mu was slightly stunned. The monster gave him a familiar feeling. It's the god of founding emperor era that had the lantern. The monster transformed from that god came close to him and it hurriedly escaped. However, he didn't move far before stopping and turning his head back. His speed is as fast as lightning and far surpasses mine. The reason why he's walking and stopping is for me to follow him. Qin Mu's heart stirred slightly, and he immediately increased his speed to chase the monster. One human and one monster sprinted in a land of darkness. Whenever Qin Mu got exhausted from running too long, the monster would slow down his speed, even stopping occasionally. One human and one monster were only 300 yards apart, and he waited quietly to let Qin Mu recover. After walking like that for countless miles, Qin Mu suddenly saw other colors and his eyes lit up. There were verdant hills and limpid waters, birdsong and fragrant flowers, and azure blue lakes, the air even seemed to become much fresher. There was also a town there that had gorgeous structures and beautiful scenery. Looking from afar, he saw numerous figures of humans, and they were living prosperously. He didn't expect Heavenly Yin World to have such a place. When the monster walked into that valley, the grayness on his body seemed to fade away immediately, and he became a god that was full of vigor. Qin Mu hurried forward, but he didn't immediately step into the place. He observed his surroundings first, and when he was sure there was no danger, only then did he walk into the valley. Gods were walking to and fro on the streets, and they were laughing and shouting. Some were even singing in high voices. It was truly the scene of a town. "Little friend has come from afar, yet we didn't receive you, please pardon us." An elderly god dressed as a scholar came from afar and laughed loudly. He received Qin Mu and said with a smile, "Our small town rarely has people visiting, so we have probably let you wait. Please come inside." Even though he looked older, he was still full of vigor, and his face was glowing. He didn't look aged at all. Qin Mu remained calm and said with a smile, "Elder is too courteous. Elder, what is this place? I saw Heavenly Yin World was completely gray, yet this place is full of life. There must be something special. This is cheerful village of Heavenly Yin World, and it's a place where immortals make joy." The elderly god's voice boomed loudly, and he said with a smile, "Our place here is filled with beauties that can soothe the troubles in your heart, or alleviate the exhaustion in your body, therefore people tend to forget to go home and remain here. It's not too much to call it cheerful village." As they were speaking, numerous goddesses walked out from nowhere, and they started dancing and singing. There were beautiful ones, seductive ones, sweet ones, sour ones, hot ones, and cold ones that all swept towards him. They smiled and said, "Guest from afar, coming to cheerful village, you naturally have to be cheerful." Qin Mu laughed and hugged them left and right. "Heavenly Yin World has such a relaxing and exquisite place. I would naturally have to live cheerfully. It's just that I only have 2 arms. How can I hug all of you? Ha ha ha." The other goddesses also started laughing. The elderly god said with a smile, "If the esteemed guest wants to hug them all, it's simple. Just stay here and be like us, wouldn't that be great? Once you stay here long enough, you would be able to hug all of them once, and not only can you hug, but you can also sleep with them." Qin Mu said with a smile, "The same as you guys. In that case, wouldn't I have to become a starved corpse?" Starved corpse. That elderly god's expression changed drastically, and the goddess around Qin Mu also has a huge change in expression. Their expression became stern. "What starved corpse? What do you know? Aren't ghosts that died from hunger starved corpse?" Qin Mu replied with a smile. His arms were instantly restrained by the goddesses beside him, and he couldn't move. That elderly god sneered and said, "So you know. But it's also too late. We are so hungry." The other goddesses gave off mournful laughs. "The flesh and blood on our body has all been completely eaten, so hungry. So our young and esteemed guest, we can only eat you. Bring him away." Qin Mu got lifted by the goddesses, and they headed towards the center of the town. Numerous gods came flooding over, and were overjoyed as they waited for the meal to be served. When they came to the center of the city, Qin Mu put his heart at ease, and the elder god sat down on a throne in front of the hall. 2 goddesses that looked like flowers grabbed Qin Mu by the arms, and below him were tens of thousands of gods that looked starved. The elderly god chuckled and said, "We have been trapped here for countless years, and we can only eat ourselves when we are starving. Even all of our bones are completely devoured, leaving only our skin left. Now that a living one has come, we can finally eat meat again." Below, the tens of thousands of gods were clapping and dancing in delight. They clamored to eat. The elderly god smiled to Qin Mu and said, "Esteemed guest, you need not worry. After you've been eaten, you will become one of us. However, you will have to starve from today onwards too. Qin Mu said with a smile, "This is your cheerful village. This is how you treat your guest. No wonder you guys don't prosper." The esteemed guest is not flustered and can even joke around. Could you have someone to rely on? The elderly god said with a smile. However, in heavenly Yin world, even if you have Heaven Duke backing you up, you can't do anything. Heaven Duke can't touch here, and Earth Count can't come here either. You can only wait for your death, obediently. Qin Mu said, "Then what is going on with the darkness in heavenly Yin world? Why would darkness leak out from heavenly Yin world? When a person is about to die, one would get very curious. Can Senior satisfy the curiosity of this person who is about to die?" The elderly god said with a smile, "Only heavenly Yin Empress can reply to this question of yours. But you will be able to see her soon. Heavenly Yin Empress, he. Since you starved corpses don't want to answer." 4 arms grew out from Qin Mu's armpits, and he was holding the life and death book. Spreading out the book with a swoosh, he shone the book in all directions and said indifferently, "In that case, I'll have to meet Heavenly Yin Empress myself." Incomparably miserable screams rang throughout the sky as countless gods held onto their faces. Black smoke poured out furiously from their orifices, and the gods that looked incomparably strong started to shrivel and turn into skins on the ground. The 2 goddesses that were grabbing Qin Mu by the arm also turned into 2 bags of skin. Qin Mu turned around and looked at that elderly god on the throne. He slowly walked towards him, and the body of that elderly god trembled. He hurriedly got up from his throne and stared at the life and death book in his hands. Mingju's life and death book. "This is Mingju's life and death book." He continued to move back, while muttering to himself, "What you are using is the divine art of Crimson Light era. Your 6 arms." Qin Mu walked forward and sat on the throne with a smile. "Not bad. You still have some judgment. Looks like after you've become a starved corpse, you still preserved some memories of your past. In that case, can you tell me how heavenly Yin world had turned into such a stage now? Also, what's up with heavenly Yin Empress? Does this heavenly Yin world have any relationship with Mingju?" Special episode part 256. The expression of the elderly god twisted, and he wanted to escape. However, he immediately stopped when he saw Qin Mu shaking the life and death book in his hand. He didn't dare to make any sudden movements. Qin Mu was even more sure that the life and death book was the bane of the starved corpses. "You say we're starved corpses, and you're not wrong." The elderly god finally spoke, and he chuckled. "The origin of the heavenly Yin world is incomparably ancient, and it's so far back to the beginning of heaven and earth. When Yudu and Xuanju were born, heavenly Yin world was born as well. Before there were so-called humans, ancient gods ruled the universe, and they formed the celestial heavens of the ancient gods. Goddess of heavenly Yin is one of the ancient gods." Qin Mu's heart trembled violently, but he said with a calm face, "In that case, Goddess of heavenly Yin is like Earth Count and Heaven Duke. They are all gods born from heaven and earth." The elderly god shook his head and said, "Goddess of heavenly Yin is greatly inferior to those 2. Heavenly Yin world is just a piece of darkness under Heaven Duke's feet, it's incomparable. However, there is also a benefit for heavenly Yin world, and that is that it isn't under Heaven Duke's jurisdiction. Heaven Duke and Earth Count, neither can come here, and that means," Qin Mu said, "which also means, the life forms living in heavenly Yin world will never have their souls fall into Yudu, therefore, they can be undying. Is my reasoning correct?" The elderly god laughed loudly, but there was no laughter coming from his heart. He seemed to be laughing for the sake of laughing. He shook his head and said, "Undying. You wish. However, the kind of immortality in heavenly Yin world isn't what you imagine it to be. Our souls are indeed immortal, but this also results in more and more souls accumulating once their corporeal bodies died. If it were a god it would be fine, as they could preserve their corporeal body, but the other life forms. So many of them have died. Qin Mu asked curiously, if more and more life forms die, wouldn't this place become another Yudu? As I said, Heavenly Yin world isn't under Earth Count's jurisdiction. Earth Count can't control this place, so how will it become Yudu? The elderly god shook his head and said, this place will never be Yudu, and it will never be Xuandu. No matter whether it's the Earth Count, or Heavenly Duke, this is their blind spot, a place they can't step into. However, when too many souls accumulate in the Heavenly Yin world, the souls will start to create chaos. How can the dead stand watching other people living in happiness? Thus, the war between souls and the living erupted. Qin Mu was puzzled. How can souls fight humans? People who have a corporeal body and a soul are much stronger than purely a soul. A soul that's dead can never defeat a living human. The elderly god said with a smile, however, the corporeal body will always have the day where they wither while the souls in Heavenly Yin world are immortal. Even gods cannot completely vanquish the souls in Heavenly Yin world. Even if their souls are completely wiped out, they don't disappear at all. In the battle between humans and ghosts, too many souls dispersed, and those souls finally become the black sand. His eyes suddenly become incomparably dark, and they were like incomparably fine black sand. It was obvious he wasn't a living person. He was a strange monster formed when the black sand invaded the human skin. The black sand is our shattered souls. The elder god revealed a strange smile. Because we are too shattered, no one can see us clearly, and no one can touch us. You're one of the rare few who can see us. After we attained our corporeal body, we would feel hungry, and this is unbearable hunger that makes us frantic for food. Thus, we started eating. He didn't talk about this history, and he only said, soon, all of the living people in Heavenly Yin world were eaten by us. Qin Mu felt his hair standing on ends, and even though the elderly god didn't describe this period of history, he could well imagine how horrifying the chaos was. In that case, where's Goddess of Heavenly Yin? Qin Mu said solemnly, why didn't Goddess of Heavenly Yin stop you guys? The elderly god didn't reply and continued to say, as we ate and ate, we realized there were no more living people in Heavenly Yin world, therefore, we started to eat ourselves. We ate the flesh and blood of our body, we ate our bones, our divine arts, and our primordial spirit. In the end, everyone was only left with skin. When we had nothing to eat, we were too hungry, so we set our gazes on Goddess of Heavenly Yin. Qin Mu shuddered. When the elderly god said that, he said it like it was natural, and the devilish nature of his voice made Qin Mu feel fear. The elderly god said, we aren't Goddess of Heavenly Yin's opponents, but luckily, we have many people. However, even with so many people, no one could bite the Goddess of Heavenly Yin. She beat us up badly, but we cannot die. We are souls so shattered that we can't shatter anymore. She couldn't kill us, and we couldn't eat her. This lasted until a guest came from outside, a guest like you who can see us, hear us, and touch us. He could even hurt us. He chuckled and said, we allied ourselves with the guest from outside, and thus, we ate Goddess of Heavenly Yin. After we ate her, there was nothing else to eat in Heavenly Yin world. However, we are still ravenous. He smacked his lips as though he was reminiscing something delicious. Ate Goddess of Heavenly Yin. Qin Mu shuddered and narrowed his eyes while saying solemnly, is this guest perhaps Black Deity of Mingju? You guys call him Black Deity of Mingju? The elderly god shook his head and said, we don't call him that here, we refer to him as Son of Heaven Yin. Qin Mu was slightly stunned. Son of Heaven Yin. The Son of Heaven of Heavenly Yin world. The elderly nodded his head and said, even though Goddess of Heavenly Yin is an ancient god born from Heavenly Yin world, she can't subdue us, because of the restraint of the great Tao. Meanwhile, Son of Heaven Yin has strange spells that could subdue us, and thus we followed him to fight wars on all sides, experiencing era after era. Afterward, he built Mingju, and the life and death book in your hands is his treasure, therefore, you are capable of countering us. Since you are one of our own. One of your own. Qin Mu gave a soft laugh and raised the life and death book to shine at him. The expression of the elderly god changed drastically, giving off piercing screeches, and black smoke came spewing out from the 5 organs, causing him to shrivel quickly. Qin Mu sat down on the throne and bent forward with one arm holding up his chin. He sank into deep thoughts. Black deity of Mingju and Son of Heaven Yin. The invasion of the darkness is from the black sand that was once souls which have shattered. The monsters in the darkness are actually human skins, and in the human skins are shattered souls of ghosts. Son of Heaven Yin connected Heavenly Yin world and the Great Ruins, allowing the black sand in Heavenly Yin world to invade the Great Ruins. The monsters in these sands, as well as the black sand, are terrified of the light from the gods, therefore when the gods enter the Great Ruins, the darkness dare not come forward. However, there's one thing that's wrong, that's the faces in the darkness. I once saw the faces of devil gods invading with the darkness in Goddesses Pass, and they got blocked by the god weapons of the goddesses that had revived. Such situations are everywhere in the Great Ruins, so where have the devil gods in the darkness come from? He looked at the town filled with skin. Even though the starved corpses could move around like lightning in the darkness, their abilities weren't profound. It was clear they weren't the devil gods in the darkness. What was strange was that the devil gods in the darkness also came and left with the darkness. When the sky was bright, no traces of them could be found. The elderly god didn't answer the questions for him. Qin Mu sat on the throne. The elderly god's position in Heavenly Yin world shouldn't be low, and since he was able to explain the history of Heavenly Yin world, it meant he had participated in the battle between Son of Heaven and Goddess of Heavenly Yin. And from then onwards, he had never been broken apart before, so he could still preserve those memories. After Qin Mu had used the life and death book, he was formed by countless different soul atoms, yet his skin still had his name. The soul atoms didn't belong to the skin, and they would naturally be discharged out, after being shone on by the life and death book. It was equivalent to Qin Mu killing them once more. Even though the black sand would return into their skins, they wouldn't be who they were anymore. The effect of life and death book is truly astonishing, black deity of Mingju. Yes, Son of Heaven Yin of Mingju, he must be an incomparably talented person to have made this kind of treasure. Just as he thought until there, rustling sounds rang out, and Qin Mu's heart stirred slightly. Qin Mu raised his head, and saw the god of founding emperor that had led him over. He stood on a bridge and beckoned his hand at him. Qin Mu's heart stirred slightly, and he recalled in detail. The god wasn't among those gods that were clamoring to eat him. Could he still have his memories? That isn't possible, right? Qin Mu hurriedly got up, and with a few steps, he reached the bridge. Below the long bridge was water rippling and stretching out from the town. The bridge stretched across the river, and the other end of the bridge had vanished in the vast grayness on the other side. The god of founding emperor saw him following and continued forward. Qin Mu quickly followed him on the bridge. When they left, the black sand gathered back in the town, and they rapidly tunneled into the organs of the skins on the ground. Soon, numerous gods stood up again, and they were vivid and lifelike. They walked around in the city, and didn't remember anything that had happened. The length of this long bridge had still given Qin Mu a scare. The long bridge moved up and down, and even after entering the darkness, it didn't break off, and continued stretching above the lake. The lake below couldn't be called a lake. It would be more appropriate to call it a sea. It also had a dark and gloomy color. Qin Mu followed him to sprint for a long time, and he still didn't walk to the end. He suddenly stopped and said indifferently, "Senior, why are you leading me forward? Why can't you say it bluntly? The elderly god could speak just now, so you should be able to, right?" In the grayness, that god stopped and turned around to look at him with empty eyes. After a moment, he took off the clothes on his upper body. Qin Mu was slightly stunned and walked forward to examine his chest. He saw some strange markings imprinted on the god's body. Incomparably thin and complicated runes formed the markings, and those markings formed words. The word "shut." In front of his chest and on his back was covered with the word "shut." Heavenly Devil Creation Technique, it's Saint Woodcutter's work. Qin Mu was stunned and suddenly shed a tear. He revealed a smile and said, "Senior, that's enough. Let us continue." The founding emperor god covered himself up and continued forward. The word "shut" was traces left behind by Heavenly Devil Creation Technique, and Saint Woodcutter had used Heavenly Devil Creation Technique to seal his soul inside his skin. The starved corpses don't eat the skin, so he could preserve his own soul and memory. However, his corporeal body was definitely unable to be protected. He would be eaten up by the starved corpses. The reason why Qin Mu shed a tear was out of respect. It moved him, but he was mostly full of gratitude. The founding emperor god knew he was definitely going to die by entering heavenly yin world, but he still ventured in without a second thought, to search for the truth of the darkness. The closer he was to the truth, the greater the danger was. The founding emperor god might have already discovered the truth about the darkness, but he didn't manage to bring it out. Instead, he died in front of the boundary stone of heavenly yin world. Only when Qin Mu arrived did he awaken. Qin Mu followed him to continue forward, and the lake under the bridge started to look more and more like a sea. He couldn't see land anymore. Qin Mu looked down the bridge, and could faintly see the huge fish in the sea. The pitch-black fish swam in the sea, and they were even biting one another ruthlessly as they frantically tried to swallow one another. However, no matter how they ate, they didn't seem full. These sea creatures are also starved corpses. They eat non-stop, yet they can't eat enough. Finally, Qin Mu saw the end of the long bridge, and even though the bridge had reached an end, there was still no end to the sea. There was a huge and transparent hourglass floating above the gray-colored sea, and it seemed like it was made using colored glass. Inside the hourglass was black-colored sand, and the sand in the upper half of the hourglass was flowing down. More than half of the sand had flowed down, and the black sand below was almost filled to the brim. Qin Mu looked from afar, and saw small palaces that were beside the hourglass. The reason why they were small was that, compared to the hourglass, they were tiny. However, after Qin Mu's calculations, he realized that the cluster of palaces would be over 10 miles in length and width, so they weren't small at all. It was like a tiny island that was on the sea. The cluster of palaces connected to the long bridge, and Qin Mu looked towards the back of the cluster of palaces. He discovered another low-hanging and long bridge, but he didn't know where it connected. The god of founding emperor stopped in his footsteps and pointed at the palace. The heavenly devil creation technique sealed him, and he couldn't speak or use his cultivation. Qin Mu thought about it and took out a brush and paper. "Senior, if you have any gains, why don't you write them down?" The god of founding emperor raised his brush and wrote quickly on the book. Qin Mu took a look, and the words were strong like ancient pines. "That's the place where the disciples of Mingju gather." Qin Mu looked at the words on the paper and said in astonishment, "How many people are there? What cultivation do they have? Are there gods of Mingju? This isn't easy to deal with. Are they dead or alive?" "Oh, they are alive." Qin Mu narrowed his eyes and thought for a moment. No matter if they are dead or alive, they won't be difficult to death with. The harder thing to deal with is where they come from and how they entered heavenly yin world. Even if I kill the strong practitioners of Mingju in the palace, there might be even more strong practitioners from Mingju flooding in. I need to slice the passage from Mingju to heavenly Yin world. The founding emperor god raised his brush to continue writing. Qin Mu frowned slightly and cried out, "Goddess of heavenly Yin. Why did you write her name? Wasn't she already eaten by the starved ghost?" "Wait a minute. I understand what you mean." He raised his head and continued to examine the palaces under the hourglass. He said with a low voice, "You are right, we need Goddess of Heavenly Yin to solve this matter. Senior, your idea is simply great. Why didn't I have such a marvelous idea? Senior, you must have been a brilliant person during founding emperor era." The god of founding emperor was blank and held his brush in the air without moving. He didn't know what Qin Mu was talking about. Qin Mu said excitedly, "Even though Goddess of Heavenly Yin was eaten, her skin should still be around and hidden somewhere. It's just that I have never done it before, so I don't know if it will work or not." The god of founding emperor had a blank expression, and it was obvious what he wrote was different from what Qin Mu was saying. Qin Mu had comprehended his words incorrectly. Qin Mu patted his shoulder and said with a smile, "Senior, you can be at ease. I have fought the disciples of Mingju before, and even though their divine arts aren't bad, they aren't invincible. I reckon that, among the disciples of Mingju here, not many are true disciples of Son of Heaven Yin. I'm not afraid of the disciples of Son of Heaven Yin, much less them. Your idea is very good, and I might even be able to investigate the truth of the darkness, settling the future dangers once and for all." The god of founding emperor was even more at a loss. He raised his brush and didn't know if he should continue writing. Qin Mu was full of confidence and took out his sword pellet. The sword pellet floated in front of his chest, and Qin Mu stretched his 5 fingers open. 8,000 swords came flying out from the sword pellet like fine needles, and every needle aimed at the center of the circle. It wasn't messy at all. The flying swords slashed down and tunneled into the sea. Qin Mu walked over and said with a solemn voice, "Senior, the knives and swords in front are heartless, and even when you have divine skin, you don't have the magic power and cultivation to use them. Let me handle this matter. Stay here and wait quietly. I shall give a show of power in front of the gods of Mingju." The god of founding emperor was even more at a loss. He suddenly came to realization and quickly wrote a sentence. He was about to let Qin Mu take a look, but Qin Mu had already gone far away. The god of founding emperor raised the piece of paper at a loss and didn't know what to do. On the paper, he wrote the words, "Lure Goddess of Heavenly Yin to attack them." It was 10 of thousands of miles different than the idea that Qin Mu had claimed to be marvelous. Qin Mu took off the willow leaf on the heart of his brows and walked forward calmly under the bridge. Countless flying swords weaved quickly under the surface of the sea, moving forward with him. Meanwhile, in the third eye on the heart of his brows, Qin Fengqing's huge eye popped out again to look around curiously. He was very interested in this dark and gloomy world. So much delicious food. Qin Mu took out the god execution mysterious knife and pressed down on the case. He had already arrived at the front gate of the cluster of palaces. 2 Daoist boys were chatting casually by the gate, and one said, "This heavenly Yin world is dark and gloomy, and once you're on shift here, you will only be replaced after several hundred to 1,000 years. It's truly boring." The other one said, "If you are bored, you can go to Cheerful Village, they have all kinds of beauties there. You can vent all you want, and their techniques are superb. Where would there be such a cheerful place in Mingju? If you still feel bored, you can kill some of the starved corpses in Heavenly Yin world. You can always have ways to find joy. Senior brother is right. There is no such world of sensual pleasures in Mingju, but if we stay too long in Heavenly Yin world, we can't even meet one living person." "Eh? The two Daoist boys that were guarding the gate suddenly saw Qin Mu, and they couldn't help staring with their eyes wide open. Their eyes had a blank look. At that moment, two flying swords rushed out from the sea and pierced through their temples from the left and right. Before the two Daoist boys could even come back to their senses, the swords extinguished their primordial spirits. The 8,000 swords gradually rose from the sea silently, and they stuck close to the ground, surrounding Qin Mu as they followed Qin Mu into the cluster of palaces. Behind him, a primordial spirit that was over 30 yards tall appeared without a sound and stood behind him. It floated forward along with him. Countless vital chi threads flew out around his primordial spirit and connected with the 8,000 flying swords. He used his primordial spirit to control the swords. Dawn, dawn, dawn. The melodious sound of a bell rang out, and someone shouted, "The day is over, the sun has set, swap the sky." The final black sand in the huge hourglass hanging above the palaces had flowed down, and the gods flew out of their palaces. All of them executed their magic power to turn the hourglass around. Qin Mu raised his head and opened up the case. The bone membrane of the head of Emperor's throne vibrated in excitement and gave off rustling sounds. Twang! Two trails of blood light rushed into the sky, and before the gods of Mingju in midair could even react, the blood light had already streaked across their necks. The blood light returned into the case, bringing along all of the chi and blood from the gods' bodies. There was no splatter of blood from the sky at all, and only two god corpses fell from above. Before the god corpses could even land, people started roaring, and numerous disciples of Mingju raised to create chaos in the lands of Mingju. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Countless sword lights burst forth from the ground and formed a sea of sword light. The instant the disciples of Mingju rushed out, many of them fell, their feet basically severed from their ankles. And before the people who had fallen could land on their heads, the hearts of their brows were pierced through by the trails of sword light. Even if there were powerful enemies that had avoided the sword light, when they saw the bad situation, they would still lose their lives under the series of attacks that were like the howling wind and torrential rain. There were flying swords that were like small silver fish everywhere in the sky and land. The paths of the flying swords were all different, and the moves that were executed by the flying swords were fantastic oddities of every description. Under the sword control technique of Qin Mu, the 18 basic sword moves had endless methods of combining themselves. And it was not only that, the 8,000 swords could become big and small, long and short, and some swords could even bend and transform from time to time. Different flying swords could even combine to form the shape of other spirit weapons, turning themselves into a cauldron, furnace, bell, pagoda, knife, spear, axe, and other spirit weapons. Even the form of dragons and phoenixes were possible. The 8,000 swords gave everyone the illusion that they were numberless. No matter how remarkable or outstanding the other party's divine art was, even if they hid in Mingju in that instant, the sword light would fly into Mingju and slaughter them in the next moment. Qin Mu had already reached the celestial being realm, and on that realm, any divine arts practitioner would undergo a huge leap forward in cultivation. The leap came from the ability to project one's primordial spirit. And Qin Mu had long been able to project his primordial spirit. His attainments in the primordial spirit were already starting to shift to possessing both spirit and form. Possessing both spirit and form required one to cultivate their primordial spirit into physical substance, to solidify the primordial spirit as though it was real. Even though he could achieve that, the strength and control of his primordial spirit had already far surpassed other divine arts practitioner of the celestial being realm. Qin Mu continued to walk forward, and the 30-yard tall primordial spirit followed behind quietly. The primordial spirit controlled 8,000 swords, and killed people like it was cutting grass. How impudent! A huge palace hall exploded, and a Mingju god leaped out. Just as he leaped into the air, the small case in Qin Mu's hands has already opened, and 2 trails of bloodlight shot in front of the Mingju god's neck. With a gentle snip, it severed his head from his body. He walked towards the palace hall in the center, and everywhere he passed by, no matter if it were gods or divine arts practitioners, they would die unnaturally. Those that he could defeat, he would use his flying swords to kill, and those he couldn't defeat would die under his god execution mysterious knife. The disciples of Mingju got slaughtered until their hearts turned cold. They retreated continuously, and there were already over 100 disciples of Mingju gathered together. They took out the huge bell that was hanging from the roof. Used the heavenly funeral bell to kill him. Hundreds of Mingju's disciples shouted in unison, and the bell flew up. The mouth of the bell aimed at Qin Mu, and he saw that 18 rings that were locked together formed the bell. Countless complicated vein lines appeared on each ring, and they were carved by Mingju's runes. When the heavenly funeral bell activated, the rings swirled in various directions, and the runes carved on them lit up. When 2 rings rotated to different degrees, the parts of the runes from 2 rings would match together to form a different rune, and different runes possessed different powers and abilities. The power of the swirling heavenly funeral bell was activated, and the bell opening suddenly trembled violently. The formless power rushed straight at Qin Mu. Special Episode Part 257. 8,000 swords came flying over and formed a huge shield in front of Qin Mu. The shield had a perfect arc, which could block the most powerful impact with the least amount of pressure. Qin Mu turned to the side and knelt on one knee with one arm blocking the back of the shield. It was the best pose to welcome the impact. Behind him, countless threads of vital qi came out from his primordial spirit and poured into the shield, strengthening the structure of the shield. The flying swords on the surface of the shield were locked together with the structure of a chain mail. He could use that kind of structure to endure the strongest impact. Other than that, all kinds of defensive runes also appeared on the shield, and those were the runes of the black tortoise. The surface of the shield had the vein lines of tortoiseshell, and on the borders of the shields were the markings of the flying serpent. Twang! The impact from heavenly funeral bell came blasting over, and there was no loud ringing. There was only violent tremors in space, and Qin Mu couldn't feel any terrifying impact. On the other hand, the primordial spirit behind him seemed to have suffered a huge blow as it was blown out of sight. This heavenly funeral bell is a divine art that's aimed at the primordial spirit or soul. Qin Mu's heart was astonished, and his primordial spirit returned quickly. The speed of a primordial spirit flying was the fastest speed in the world, and even if blown over 10,000 miles away, he just needed an instant to return. The only problem was that Qin Mu didn't know if his primordial spirit could handle the attacks from heavenly funeral bell. He didn't know much about the divine arts of Mingju, and had only seen them on Lu Qianzhong before. Lu Qianzhong only had time to execute one move before he died, so he didn't get the chance to see more of Mingju's techniques and divine arts. Just as his primordial spirit flew back, the second wave of impact from the heavenly funeral bell followed closely, and blew his primordial spirit even further away. Yet Qin Mu's corporeal body still feel much impact. This heavenly funeral bell has strong power, but it's only effective against the primordial spirit or soul. In that case, Qin Mu's consciousness controlled his body, and the shield suddenly disassembled. The moment the shield broke apart, Qin Mu had already transformed into a 3-headed and 6-armed form. His 6 arms grabbed towards the 8,000 swords that had transformed into 6 divine knives. He leaped and attacked towards the front of the heavenly funeral bell. He was like a fierce tiger that had entered a flock of lambs. His 6 divine knives swung up and down, severing the heads of the people from their bodies. He killed them like he was cutting grass, and he executed Butcher's 9 skills of heaven knife to his heart's content. The 9 skills of heaven knife, from midnight battle across stormy cities, sun on east sea, 1,000 layers wave to long knife hangs below the moonlight, among the stars the heavenly horses, every knife skill was intricate and impressive. The knife light was like wind and rain, sea and waves. It was hanging below the moonlight, and was like the heavenly horses among the stars. In addition to Crimson Light Era's strongest creation, divine art, having 3 heads and 3 arms allowed him to look around and for his attacks have no blind spots at all. It was like 3 Qin Mu killing their way into the flock of lambs. Suddenly, the knife lights pulled back, and his 6 arms raised high up. The 6 knives collided together to transform into a single long knife, which slashed down with his 6 arms. Kai. The knife light was breathtaking and split apart the door of the palace hall. The door split and flew towards both sides, opening up the hall. Meanwhile, corpses fell from his front, back, left, and right. All of them collapsed one after another, and no one could stand up anymore. His primordial spirit flew back, and it landed behind his back. Qin Mu rubbed his 6 arms gently, and the long knife transformed into a sword pellet to float in front of the heart of his brows. He paused in his footsteps, and his vital qi swept up the small case into his hands. Only then did he walk into the hall. Clang! The heavenly funeral bell behind him fell to the ground and rolled down the steps, giving off more loud ringing. In the hall, a devil god cloaked in a black cape sat straight on his throne. He had 2 curved and long scarlet horns on his head, and his eyes were like the eyes of a human. The devil god held onto a book and was studying. Qin Mu carried his small case and walked over. The small case clacked and a small slit opened up. The devil god placed down the book in his hands and looked at him. He chuckled and said, "It's been a long time since anyone has come into heavenly Yin world. The last time anyone came in was 20,000 years ago. Founding Emperor didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth, so he ordered gods to investigate this place. Now you are here. Could some impudent fool in the outside world wish to overturn the heaven?" Qin Mu carried the case and bowed. 107th descendant of founding emperor, Qin Fengqing, pays my respect to senior of Mingju. So you are a descendant of founding emperor, you are still young. The devil god said with a smile, "Is founding emperor dead? If he isn't, he will tell you never to reveal your true name to others, especially to a person of Mingju. Even though you have some abilities, you are still too young. Do you know who am I?" He stood up, and his tall and sturdy body was even taller than Qin Mu's primordial spirit that was over 30 yards tall. The surname Kuei is a big surname in Mingju that has given birth to many gods, and my surname is none other than Kuei. His voice was extremely loud. My name in religion is Kuei Wuxiu. Of course, this name is also fake. However, many people still call me King Wuxiu. Qin Mu's heart stirred slightly, and he asked, "I met 2 gods that had the surname Kuei, one called Shaman God Kuei, one of them called Kuei Qingpei. May I know if they have any relation with senior?" Kuei Qingpei is the disciple of His Majesty, and is an outstanding talent in our Kuei family. The devil god Kuei Wuxiu said with a smile, "Meanwhile Shaman god Kuei is my disciple. He was placed in Mingju by the celestial heavens and he learned under me. You are still alive after meeting them, so you have some methods. However, since you have seen Shaman God Kuei, you should know he is learning from me and know how dangerous it is to reveal your true name in front of me." Qin Mu's expression was ashen, and he raised his small case. Wuxiu said with a smile, "It's useless. Even though the God Execution Mysterious Knife is powerful, and I'm far inferior, your God Execution Mysterious Knife can never hit me at all. Actually, when you were dealing with the gods of Mingju just now, I had already seen the flaw in God Execution Mysterious Knife. You had used the knife to kill numerous gods under me, but you had never used this knife to deal with the divine arts practitioners hiding in Mingju. When you meet divine arts practitioners, you always used your flying sword to kill them. What does that mean?" He couldn't resist laughing out. The god execution mysterious knife can't slash into Mingju. Qin Mu's expression was gravely white, and there was no hint of blood at all. King Wuxiu was very satisfied and said leisurely, "When I saw you killing my subordinates, why didn't I show myself? Now I can tell you. I am afraid of the god execution mysterious knife." The head of a strong practitioner of Emperor's throne, his gaze is like knives, and that head drinks blood. He has killed countless gods, and I won't make a move unless I see through it. However, the god execution god knife has already been seen through by me, and you can't hurt me at all. Qin Mu was disappointed and muttered, "You could actually see me kill your subordinates, and resist yourself from making a move, you are so ruthless." Wuxiu had his hands behind his back, and he said with a smile, "You are too young, little brat. What has their death got to do with me? Anyway, even after they die, they can still resurrect in Mingju. Only those ill-fated ones that had their primordial spirit and soul sucked away by that divine knife are completely dead. However, what does that have to do with me? Since you know my disciple, Shaman God Kuei, don't you want to see even more powerful ultimate arts?" Qin Mu's complexion was horrifyingly pale, and he said in a hurry, "Senior, wait a moment. Senior, don't you want to know my motive for coming to Heavenly Yin World?" Wuxiu turned his head, and his horns made him look like a mountain goat. He said with a smile, "All right then. Since I rarely meet any outsider while I'm on duty here, I shall give you some time. Tell me your motive." Qin Mu put on a serious face and said, "I'm here to find Goddess of Heavenly Yin." Goddess of Heavenly Yin. Wuxiu seemed to hear the most laughable thing and replied while laughing, "Goddess of Heavenly Yin was eaten tens of thousands of years ago, and only the skin of the goddess is left. What have you come to find her for? What can you do after finding her? Use her skin as an offering to me." Qin Mu's expression dimmed, and he muttered, "Goddess of Heavenly Yin is dead. How could this be? Impossible. No. It's impossible. Goddess of Heavenly Yin is a sacred god born by nature, who can kill her. You must be lying to me. I don't believe you." Wuxiu burst out into laughter and said, "Her skin is suppressed in the sea. Do you want me to summon her to show you?" "I don't believe you, you must be lying to me." Qin Mu had a blank look in his eyes as he muttered, "You must be lying to me. I'm here on orders to form an alliance with Goddess of Heavenly Yin. She is a natural-born god, the master of Heavenly Yin World. She's incomparably powerful. She couldn't have died, she couldn't have." Wuxiu walked beside him and said leisurely, "Killing someone by crushing their heart. I love to see an insufferably arrogant brat like you breaking down. Let me enlighten you before your death. Follow me. I shall summon Goddess of Heavenly Yin for you to take a look." Qin Mu followed him in disappointment. His footsteps were uneven, and he almost tripped on the corpses on the ground. He had to stumble forward to keep up. King Wuxiu came to the seaside, and the grey sea suddenly became full of violent waves. The activities in the sea grew more and more intense. After a moment, an incomparably majestic goddess rose up from the sea. The corporeal body of the goddess was vast, but she seemed not to be wearing any clothing. Instead, she used a rainbow as her clothes. Qin Mu raised his head, and seemed to be slightly hopeful. He shouted, "Goddess, you are still alive. Goddess, I'm here on an order to form an alliance with you. Goddess, please kill this scoundrel." Wuxiu laughed and seemed rather happy. "You can't see through this, right? Goddess of Heavenly Yin doesn't look like she is just skin, but she's actually empty on the inside. Her body is filled with black sand and those souls that shattered. She's not herself anymore, and only skin remains of her corporeal body. Her primordial spirit doesn't even exist anymore. She is already a starved corpse." He turned around and revealed a peculiar smile. "Now, you can die. Qin Mu did a final struggle by opening the small case. 2 blood light slashed towards Wuxiu. Wuxiu laughed, and his body vanished into the darkness, as though formed by countless grains of black sand. The 2 lights streaked across his body, but he was still unharmed. As expected, the divine arts of Mingju can indeed counter the god execution mysterious knife. Wuxiu smiled. The 2 blood lights circled around him, but no matter fast they were, they could never hit his true form. I'm done playing. Let me send you guys off. Wuxiu bowed towards Qin Mu while he was in Mingju and said with a smile, I can worship you to death. Even if there's a world between us, I can still do it. Qin Feng Qin, take a bow from me. With the bow, Qin Mu's mind was blown, and his world started spinning. In the next moment, he was in front of a large devil god. The devil god had horns on its head and hooves on its feet. Devil flames burned around its body, and it was none other than Wuxiu's primordial spirit. It stretched out its hand to grab him. Before he could even grab him, his gaze suddenly became blank, and he looked behind Qin Mu foolishly. In the darkness behind Qin Mu, 3 eyes suddenly split apart in the darkness, and they flashed with a strange light that had the shape of a butterfly's wings. Next, the face of a chubby baby gradually appeared from the darkness. This is... He was dumbfounded. Tu Qin Feng Qing. The fluster on Qin Mu's face had long vanished, and replacing it was a calm expression. King Wuxiu, come meet my older brother. Wuxiu felt his blood run cold. He was incomparably huge in front of Qin Mu, but in front of the chubby baby's face, he was pitifully small. The chubby baby stretched his hand to grab him, and even with his remarkable abilities, he couldn't break free. The baby put him into his mouth. My old brother and I share a name. Before he died, he heard Qin Mu's voice. That's because we share a soul, and we share a corporeal body. The chubby baby swallowed him up in his mouth, and started to chew vigorously. He suddenly grabbed towards Qin Mu in excitement. Bad younger brother, die. And at that moment, Qin Mu's corporeal body took out a willow leaf and stuck it gently back on the heart of his brows. Before the chubby baby could grab Qin Mu, a formless force came sweeping over and pulled him into the abyss. Bad brother. After the chubby baby landed back on the ground, he suddenly sat down on his butt and looked around. He realized he had fallen back into the seal of Qin Word land. The White-Beard Elder and Crimson Emperor were avoiding him by hiding in the mountains. Bad brother, I'll eat you once I catch you. The chubby baby erupted with fury and crawled with his hands and feet towards the mountains. He planned to catch the clone of Heaven Duke and the consciousness of the Crimson Emperor to vent his anger. I'll beat the old one first before beating the 3 heads. Both of them hurriedly avoided him, and the clone of Heaven Duke said, There's no need to be afraid of him, this is the seal of Earth Count, it will change continuously. He won't be able to catch us. Crimson Emperor said, You also said that the previous time and then we got caught. It definitely won't happen this time. Qin Mu returned into his body and sighed in relief. In front, the corpse of Wuxiu sank, and Mingju also vanished. Qin Mu raised his head to look up and revealed a smile. Goddess of Heavenly Yin, we have finally met. However, you don't have to be sad. My divine art might be able to help you gather your soul that has been consumed. Just as he said that, Goddess of Heavenly Yin, who was standing in the sea, raised her foot to step over. Qin Mu's hair stood on end, and before he could even execute any divine art, he sprinted back on the bridge and quickly reached where the god of founding emperor was. Without any explanation, he grabbed him and ran. Loud crumbling sounds of palaces crushed underfoot came from behind. After Goddess of Heavenly Yin's foot missed, she turned around to chase. Her body stretched all the way out of the space, and every step she took was 1,000 miles. However, the speed of her taking a step wasn't too fast, yet no one could match up with the speed she was moving. It's those starved ghosts that are controlling the body of the goddess. Qin Mu quickly guessed the reason why the skin of goddess of heavenly yin would lay her hands on them. Without thinking, he immediately took out the life and death book to shine at the magnificent goddess. He thought to himself, goddess of heavenly yin has already been eaten by those starved ghosts. So the starved ghosts actually possess the goddess of heavenly yin. Which also means goddess of heavenly yin is a starved ghost herself. Shining from the life and death book, the goddess only paused for a moment as black smoke poured out from her eyes, nose, ears, and mouth. She raised her feet once more and chased after them. She is too huge, the life and death book can't shine onto her entire body. Qin Mu used his vital qi and controlled the life and death book to float behind his head. He sprinted furiously and utilized the heaven-pilfering divine legs that cripple taught him to the extreme, raising his speed again and again. Senior, run! Qin Mu felt exhausted from dragging the god of founding emperor along. He couldn't unleash his full speed, so he hurriedly urged to the god. The god of founding emperor immediately took off, and his speed was much faster than Qin Mu, leaving him in his dust. Qin Mu was stunned and said angrily, "So that's how loyal you are. I even shed a few tears for you. If you can run so fast, you should have brought me along as well." Suddenly, goddess of heavenly yin stretched her palm out to grab at him. The palm from outer space rubbed against the atmosphere of heavenly yin world, causing flames to ignite from the friction. However, the flames were unable to burn her at all. Her palm was like a vast land falling from the sky as she grabbed at Qin Mu. Behind Qin Mu's head, the life and death book shone brightly, and before goddess of heavenly yin's hand could reach, her fingers turned limp one after another as though deflated. Yet even then, when this palm landed, it was enough to completely cover Qin Mu. Seeing how Qin Mu was about to be covered by the land-sized palm, countless runes swirled around his body, and his teleportation divine art erupted out. The runes swirled furiously around him like yellow joss papers, and when the runes turned into ashes, Qin Mu vanished along with them. In the next moment, Qin Mu appeared 1,000 miles away, and countless runes appeared around him again. He disappeared, and he was another 1,000 miles away when he reappeared. His body flashed repeatedly, and even if he had to risk exhausting all of his cultivation, he had to rush out of heavenly yin world before goddess of heavenly yin caught up to him. Behind him, the low bridge crumbled continuously from goddess of heavenly yin stomps. The long bridge couldn't endure the weight of a natural-born goddess after all. Qin Mu was not far from shore and at that moment, and countless monsters swarmed over to latch on him just as he was about to teleport again. Scram! Qin Mu executed the life and death book, and the monsters turned into skins. Above his head, goddess of heavenly yin's palm smacked down ruthlessly. Boom! The sea of heavenly yin world trembled violently, and the ground on the shore also shook non-stop. Astonishing cracks stretched out in all directions, and loud rumbles came from all directions. Lava spewed out from the cracks, and yet the lava there was grey as well. Goddess of heavenly yin raised her palm, and the bridge broke. The sea had been drained out, and a dried-up seabed appeared. The sea water that was originally there had vaporized. As she raised her palm, countless runes flew around under her palm. In the center of the runes was a huge sword pellet that was like a metal ball, and the sword pellet was actually smashed in on one side. Whoosh! The runes burned and the metal ball vanished, appearing in the town beside the sea. Goddess of heavenly yin was in doubt, as she didn't see Qin Mu who had teleported away. She looked around, but she still couldn't find him. In the town, the god of founding emperor popped his head out, and saw the sword pellet clanging around in the town. Qin Mu tumbled around in the sword pellet, as the metal ball bounced up and down. In the sword pellet, Qin Mu propped up carefree sword and used it as an axle. Goddess of Heavenly Yin had nearly flattened him along with the sword pellet, and he had used Carefree Sword to not get smacked to death by Goddess of Heavenly Yin. However, the sword pellet deformed from the blow. When the sword pellet bounced up once more, the metal ball broke open and separated into 8,000 swords. Qin Mu leaped out and stretched his body. With one hand raised, 8,000 swords collided with one another and transformed into a small sword pellet, which landed in his palm. Suddenly, a crack came from his palm, and the tiny sword pellet exploded, turning into a fine dust that fell from the sky. Qin Mu's expression turned dark as he looked at his palm. Other than Carefree Sword that was in his palm, only a pile of metal dust was left. He had withstood the palm from Goddess of Heavenly Yin and didn't die, but the sword pellet used to block the blow from her had shattered into powder. There was still support from Qin Mu's vital qi previously, but once Qin Mu took back his vital qi from the sword pellet, it couldn't endure the damage any longer and exploded into a fine dust. The new won't come if the old doesn't go. Qin Mu still felt a pain in his heart. It was the most compatible spirit weapon that he had made when he had become a divine arts practitioner. It was a spirit weapon he had planned to use his entire life, but it shattered into fine dust just like that. The most crucial point was that the materials required for refining the spirit weapons were exchanged with Sai Yunxiang by pawning everything he had. To refine the swords to the extent of flowing water, he had forged them with the devil fire and Li fire together, and only then was his sword pellet completed. At that point, other than Carefree Sword, all of his other swords completely shattered. How could he not be pained? Luckily, I scammed a bunch of Buddha Vitality Crimson Chromium from Sakura Buddha. This kind of metal is a unique metal to the Buddha realm. The amount I've scammed is enough for me to make another sword pellet made from Buddha Vitality Crimson Chromium. Qin Mu let out a shaky breath and looked at the towering Goddess of Heavenly Yin, who was still searching around for him. The god of Founding Emperor ran out again and came to the front of Qin Mu. Qin Mu had a black face, and his anger was hard to appease. No loyalty. The god blushed with shame and stretched out his hand to pull him. He did a running action, but couldn't pull him along no matter what. He shrugged his shoulders helplessly. I see. Qin Mu came to a realization. You don't have magic power or corporeal body, and even your primordial spirit is gone, thus you can't bring me to run. All right, I'm not angry anymore. I need your help to find a high location, a place where I can shine my life and death book on Goddess of Heavenly Yin's face. The god of Founding Emperor immediately ran out of the town, and when he saw Qin Mu not following, he immediately stopped to beckon him. Qin Mu hurried forward, and the two of them left into the distance. Not long after, they arrived at a tall tower beside the sea. Qin Mu looked up and was astonished at how tall the tower was. Heavenly Yin world was dim, and he couldn't see far out into the distance. However, when Qin Mu executed 9 Heaven's Eyes awakening skill, he could still see dozens of miles. Yet, when he looked up, he couldn't see the top of the tower. The grey fog circled around the waist of the tower, and he truly didn't know how tall the tower was. The body of the tower seemed to be constructed by some divine metal that gave off a black-colored sheen. What is this tower used for? It's probably even higher than Crimson Light Heaven suppressing floor in Kai Shi's hand. When he thought until there, he saw the god of Founding Emperor leaping up quickly and scaling the eaves on each level. Qin Mu executed Heaven Pilfering Divine Legs and ran up the tower. One leaped and one ran as they rushed up the top of the tower. When Qin Mu rushed up the peak of this tower, the god had already been waiting there for him. It was obvious he was much faster. Qin Mu exclaimed to himself, and took out the life and death book to place in the hands of the god. I will cast a spell on the top of the tower, and you shall stand here. When I lure Goddess of Heavenly Yin over, you shall open up the book and use the book to shine her. The god of Founding Emperor nodded repeatedly, and as Qin Mu was about to jump down the top of the tower, he heard a flapping sound from behind. He turned around and saw the god opening the life and death book, and looking at the shining page before deflating. Qin Mu didn't know whether to cry or laugh. He took the life and death book, which was still shining at him. Without the shine of the life and death book, the black sand flowed back and poured into the skin of the god. Soon, he inflated again. Qin Mu passed the life and death book into his hands again and said, "This is the front. This is the back. Don't mix them up. If you mix them up, we're both dead." The god of founding emperor nodded his head and beat his chest. Qin Mu took in a deep breath and shouted, "Goddess of heavenly yin, I am here." His voice rang out, and his hands rubbed together. His vital qi transformed into vermilion bird vital qi, and he spread a huge fireball out. The light was like a blazing sun that lit up the surroundings. The surroundings were silent, and the god of founding emperor held onto the life and death book nervously. He dared not put his guard down. At that moment, the land suddenly trembled violently as incomparably heavy footsteps rang out. Special Episode Part 258. Qin Mu took in a long breath, and suppressed the palpitation in his heart. To gather Goddess of Heavenly Yin's soul, it was impossible with just Soul Guide. Soul Guide was a divine art that could guide one's soul back from Yudu, allowing the soul to return back into his corporeal body. Meanwhile, Goddess of Heavenly Yin was eaten until only her skin was left. Her soul might also have been eaten, and turned into part of the black sand in Heavenly Yin world. If he wanted to gather her soul, he would have to make some changes to Soul Guide. Qin Mu was also enlightened by the god of founding emperor, and he thought of changing Soul Guide to gather Goddess of Heavenly Yin's soul. As long as Goddess of Heavenly Yin's soul returned, she could block the control Mingju had on the darkness of the Great Ruins. Furthermore, Goddess of Heavenly Yin also knew secrets that many people didn't, and it might help Qin Mu unravel even more secrets of the Great Ruins. In addition to that, the Goddess of Heavenly Yin was a natural-born goddess, and with such huge assistance, the pressure on eternal peace would be smaller. Of course, all of that was based on whether he would succeed in changing Soul Guide and managing to gather her soul. If it didn't work, he definitely couldn't escape from the pursuit of Goddess of Heavenly Yin, and he would only die. The sound of footsteps got closer and closer. He could see the majestic body of Goddess of Heavenly Yin appearing faintly in the fog. She hurried over according to Qin Mu's voice, because the starved ghosts controlled her body. After all, she wasn't the true Goddess of Heavenly Yin, and didn't have remarkable powers. She couldn't see what was in the darkness, and could only determine his location by sound. Qin Mu focused, and the gate of heaven influence suddenly appeared behind him. A book gradually became clearer and clearer in his hands. Standing on the top of the tower, he flipped open this ancient book, and recited out the Yudu writings inside. Cryptic Yudu language came from his mouth, and it was calm and steady. Behind him, the gate of heaven influence suddenly turned around. The gate, originally opened outwards, was opened inwards. The lintel of the door was where the sill had been and vice versa. The gate of heaven influence was as it was named, a gate that received the influence of heaven and earth, heaven being Xuanju, and earth being Yudu. Above the lintel of the door was the territory of Xuanju, and under the sill of the door was the territory of Yudu. In that past, Qin Mu never thought which place represented the middle of heaven and earth. It was clear at that point that between heaven and earth was the mortal world, but that there was also a place that was the shade of heaven. Having flipped the gate of heaven influence, heaven and earth flipped. In that case, the shade of heaven would go from below heaven to above heaven. Of course, the change wasn't truly him flipping Heavenly Yin world around and placing it above Xuanju. Instead, he changed the structure of the gate of heaven influence. By changing the structure of the divine art, the effect of the divine art would be different from the previous time, and that time, he had completely flipped things around. The book in his hands wasn't a tool for him to execute divine art, but instead, it was a tool for him to ensure every word he read was correct. It was equivalent to a dictionary of Urdu words. The undulation and cadence of his voice became greater and greater as the resounding parts became more and more impassioned, while the lower parts droned and vibrated more and more. The gate of heaven influence no longer had sinister wind sweeping in, and instead, there was light gradually appearing. At the same time, Goddess of Heavenly Yin finally determined his position and walked over. Her body became clearer. When the black fog in front of her dispersed, she appeared in front of the tall tower. The god of founding emperor didn't think and immediately opened up the life and death book. The light from the life and death book instantly shone on Goddess of Heavenly Yin's face. Goddess of Heavenly Yin's facial features distorted, and she gave off a miserable shriek. Black smoke rolled out from her eyes, nose, ears, and mouth. Whoosh! She lifted her palm and blocked in front of her face, and her fingers twisted rapidly. Her fingers shriveled up at a rapid speed. Her other hand raised up, and she clawed towards the god on top of the tower. However, the palm deflated from the shine of the life and death book. When it landed on the tower, it had already become a floating skin that fluttered down. It didn't hurt Qin Mu and the rest. Qin Mu had no other thoughts and continued to chant his Urdu language. The light shining out from the door became stronger and stronger. An incomparably bright light shone out, and accompanying it was an incomparably loud voice that shook the world. The voice actually overlapped with Qin Mu's voice, and it was like a voice, but once it passed through the gate of heaven influence, it was amplified several times and reverberated throughout heaven and earth. Light from the gate of heaven influence shone on Goddess of Heavenly Yin's body, and her shrieks became even more miserable and deafening to the ears. It almost suppressed the Urdu language that was coming from Qin Mu and the gate of heaven influence. Suddenly, her body moved to avoid the light from the life and death book, and her hand rapidly recovered. The sacred god that was born from heaven and earth grabbed the foundation to raise up the immeasurably tall pagoda with brute force. The god hurriedly shifted the life and death book, and the light from the book shone on her face again. Black smoke rolled out from her face, and her face quickly shriveled up, turning her into a faceless woman. Qin Mu's gate of heaven influence also moved as she did, so the light from the gate of heaven influence never left her face. The light from that gate became brighter and brighter, and the high pitch from the gate became higher while the low pitch became lower. It deafened everyone's ears and made their chests resonate in unison. Her body was lit up, and more darkness was pouring over, flowing into her body. At the same time, the darkness in her body was pouring out from her face at a furious speed. Goddess of Heavenly Yin struggled and shrieked as she swung the tower around. Such terrifying power was astonishing, as expected of a god born from nature. Qin Mu's feet stuck firmly on the top of the tower, and no matter how she swung the tower, Qin Mu never moved and continued his chant. The god of founding emperor also tried his best to stabilize himself and let life and death book shine on Goddess of Heavenly Yin's face, to discharge even more black sand. At the same time, the black sand flooding over transformed into a torrent of darkness that was as thick as a dragon, and poured into the Goddess of Heavenly Yin's body. That was summoning the soul. The improved soul guide that Qin Mu had used summoned the soul of Goddess of Heavenly Yin, and among all of the black sand in Heavenly Yin world, any of them that had the shattered soul of Goddess of Heavenly Yin would be guided over by his divine art. Even if they were fine grains, they would still fly towards Goddess of Heavenly Yin's body. Not only that, his divine art could even travel to the great ruins and every world connected to Heavenly Yin world. Soul Guide was originally a spell from Urdu. It was because the divine arts practitioners of eternal peace didn't research into Urdu language that the divine arts practitioners gradually replaced Urdu language with the devil language. Even so, Soul Guide could allow the power of the divine art to reach Urdu, and seized back the soul of people already dead. That showed how marvelous the divine art was. Only under Qin Mu, who was proficient in Yudu language, did the divine art finally return to its original state. The first time Qin Mu used the divine art spectacularly was in the ominous land of Supreme Emperor Heaven. With one divine art, he managed to awaken thousands of gods that had died in battle. That was the time he had seized the souls and primordial spirits of gods from Earth Count, and thus, the messenger of death had come with such a fierce aura. The improved soul guide that Qin Mu was using guided over all of the atoms from Goddess of Heavenly Yin's soul, which were scattered in the great ruins, and all the worlds connected to Heavenly Yin world. It was no problem for him at all. However, that wasn't all he was going to do. Other than summoning all of the atoms of her soul back, he also wanted to reconstruct her soul and revive the sacred goddess that had died for God knows how many thousands of years. Even in the Qin word land in his third eye, his cryptic voice faintly traveled and entranced the clone of Heaven Duke, the consciousness of Crimson Emperor, and Big Baby Qin Fengqing, as they listened carefully. Bad brother isn't bad at the pronunciation. The baby sat on the ground and pulled out his thumb from his mouth while squeaking childishly. Once I catch him, I'll pluck his head off and eat. The clone of Heaven Duke had a grim expression and said with a low voice, "He's starting to take advantage of me." The consciousness of the Crimson Emperor felt Qin Mu's Yudu language was pretty profound and hard to understand. He asked, "How has he taken advantage of you?" The clone of Heaven Duke said with a sigh, "He flipped the gate of heaven influence around to steal my light and reconstruct the soul of another person." The consciousness of Crimson Emperor jumped in shock and cried out, "He dares to steal your power. Is this brat trying to go against heaven?" The clone of Heaven Duke said, "Why wouldn't he dare? He dares to even lock you and I here, so what's stealing my power to him? Luckily, he isn't stealing much of it. The reason he has flipped the gate of heaven influence and borrowed my light to shine on Heavenly Yin world is probably to revive the goddess of Heavenly Yin." Crimson Emperor's expression became grim, and he asked solemnly, "Goddess of Heavenly Yin is dead. Before you died, she had already died." The clone of Heaven Duke said indifferently, "Back then, I could sense her death, but I couldn't see Heavenly Yin world so I could only sigh ruefully. When I move, Heavenly Yin world moves as well, and this world is forever hidden in my shadow, therefore, I couldn't save her." The gaze of Crimson Emperor flickered. "Goddess of Heavenly Yin died before me. In that case, she must have died during Dragon Han era. If she had died during the Crimson Light era, I would have known. 3 heavens of Dragon Han. During Dragon Han era, 3 celestial heavens were standing against one another. May I ask Heaven Duke, which celestial heavens killed the goddess of Heavenly Yin?" The clone of Heaven Duke took a look at him and said calmly, "You have already died, so there's no need to ask so much. On the other hand, son of Qin piques my curiosity. This kid has founded such a divine art that allows even people who had their soul scattered to have their soul reconstructed. If he really succeeds in doing so, it will be the beginning of a change in the world. How could there be such a shrewd person in the world?" The consciousness of Crimson Emperor said with a sigh, "He isn't shrewd, it's just that he can think of what others dare not and never thought of. He can think of things that people can never imagine, and he dares to carry it out. Others may feel that whatever they know is the rule and fixed reasoning, but in his heart, there are no rules and fixed reasonings. This is why he is able to create divine arts that even Heaven Duke would find astonishing." The clone of Heaven Duke said with a smile, "Even though he has many ideas, it's still hard to say if he can succeed." At that moment, Qin Mu's voice that was traveling into the Qin word land suddenly became short and ragged. It was like a syllable coming out after another syllable. The expression of Heaven Duke turned grave, and he said with a low voice, "If he succeeds, the rules of the great Tao of heaven and earth will change accordingly." Crimson Emperor, can you feel the slight change in the great Tao of heaven and earth? At that moment, The great Buddha, that had been sleeping above Qin Mu land, suddenly woke up and opened his eyes. He said in astonishment, "A slight change is happening to the great Tao of heaven and earth." Who is a Tao brother Heaven Duke and Crimson Emperor? When did both of you come here? Old Buddha, don't come down, don't come down. The consciousness of the Crimson Emperor immediately waved his hands and stopped the great Buddha that was planning and rubbed his hands and feet nervously. He had planned to seize the old Buddha when he came down. However, Brahma Buddha didn't come down and said, "Many thanks, Your Majesty Crimson Emperor, for the warning. Pardon this old monk for not coming down then. May I ask, Tao brother Heaven Duke and Your Majesty Crimson Emperor, how did both of you get here?" The clone of Heaven Duke said with a sigh, "It's hard to explain with a few words, there's no need to bring it up again." That old Buddha took a look at them, and he understood, so he didn't continue asking. "What's the matter with the slight change in the great Tao of heaven and earth? It seems to be from this place." Crimson Emperor said, "It's the thing that son of Qin is creating, his reviving goddess of heavenly yin." "Is it caused by Qin Mu, or by his older brother?" Old Buddha asked. "It's by my bad brother." Qin Fengqing, who was hiding behind the mountain, couldn't resist asking, "Are you coming down or not?" "I'm not." Old Buddha said righteously, "If I go down, I will be trapped as well." Qin Fengqing, "You can't do anything to me. Did you forget how you had tried to eat me, and that you got suppressed by me?" The clone of Heaven Duke said, "He won't eat us, but he will tear apart our limbs to play. You will suffer the same fate, if you come down." Old Buddha said with a smile, "Pure and innocent evil is a great evil." The clone of Heaven Duke sighed and said, "It's still not as terrifying as wicked. Crimson Emperor, and I had once assisted his brother Qin Mu to seize his cultivation, and in the end, Qin Mu became wicked. That was truly a great terror. He was completely lawless. If it wasn't for my skills being higher than his and that I had already thought of a solution beforehand, I'm afraid." Old Buddha shuddered. "You too sure knows how to have fun. If Qin Mu had really turned wicked, what would we do? It seems like it isn't the first time his brother Qin Mu created such a huge ruckus. In the recent hundreds of years, changes in the great Tao of heaven and earth are gradually becoming more frequent, and eternal peace's reform has evolved from changing skills into changing paths. The great Tao of heaven and earth has been changing itself for the past few hundred years, and there are many more paths than there were 20,000 years ago. It's no wonder the celestial heavens are worried about eternal peace turning into another celestial heaven." Heaven Duke said, "The great Tao of heaven and earth still didn't have much of a change in the previous few years, but in recent years, with Son of Qin coming out from his training, the frequencies of the changes are becoming more and more frequent. To us ancient gods, every change means our powers are weakened, and this might not be a good thing. After the ancient gods are born, we can't flow together with the great Tao. When the Tao changes and we don't, it means every change in skill and Tao is weakening us." Old Buddha said, "The soul of goddess of heavenly yin has shattered into the finest black sand, so how is he going to revive her?" Heaven Duke said, "His divine art crosses too many systems. There is Yudu system, Mingju spells, Xuanju's divine arts, creation divine arts, the God path, the devil path, the Buddha path, the Tao sect, and many other things which are hard to say. He has many devious ideas, and it's still not known if the goddess of heavenly yin can be revived." Old Buddha wanted to see the sight of Qin Mu casting the spell, but if he left, Qin Fengqing would be able to break open the seal, so he could only hold himself back. Meanwhile, on the other side, the starved ghosts in goddess of heavenly yin's body were still pouring out furiously. They transformed into black smoke, which left into the distance. Most of the starved ghosts had been discharged out, and not many of them were left. And so, goddess of heavenly yin calmed down, and didn't continue to attack Qin Mu and the god of founding emperor. The god continued to shine the life and death book on Goddess of Heavenly Yin's face, and he was nervous. He didn't dare to relax. Next, he saw the shattered soul of Goddess of Heavenly Yin returning from Qin Mu's summon, and her shriveled-up face gradually become well-developed again. Finally, all of the particles of Goddess of Heavenly Yin's soul were summoned over by Qin Mu, and the starved ghosts completely discharged. The sacred god born from nature stood there without moving and just held the tower in her hands. The god of founding emperor stood on the top of the tower while Qin Mu stood on the tip. Behind him was his flipped gate of heaven influence. Words came out one after another, and every word was like a pearl. His voice boomed like thunder, and light from the gate of heaven influence shone on Goddess of Heavenly Yin's face. He was stealing Heaven Duke's power, and using the mighty force of Heaven Duke's creation, to reconstruct Goddess of Heavenly Yin's soul. Inside the Goddess of Heavenly Yin's body, countless black grains of sand reconstructed continuously, and her heaven soul was gradually forming. Qin Mu's expression was pale, and he felt a sweetness rising up his throat as blood poured up. Even though he said he was stealing the power of Heaven Duke to execute his divine art, he had also exhausted a massive amount of magic power from his own body. Besides his magic power, his vitality and corporeal body were all thoroughly exhausted, and it was hard for him to hold on. Suddenly, his body trembled, and he showed his three-headed and six-armed form. His primordial spirit also transformed into a three-headed and six-armed form. Qin Mu stabilized his aura, and after some time, he finally reconstructed the heaven soul of Goddess of Heavenly Yin. The gate of heaven influence behind him suddenly rang out as heaven and earth were flipped once again, transforming back into the normal gate of heaven influence. Black Qi rushed out, and that was the Yudu Devil Qi. The Qi rushed into Goddess of Heavenly Yin's body. It was rushing to her tailbone where the earth soul was being reconstructed. The power Qin Mu was stealing was Earth Count's power, and he was borrowing Earth Count's power to reconstruct Goddess of Heavenly Yin's earth soul. Worg. The three heads of Qin Mu vomited blood from his mouth, and he tried to suppress his spirit that was almost breaking down. He continued to turn the gate horizontally and stole both Heaven Duke and Earth Count's power at the same time. Black and white light poured out, at the same time to shine on the navel of Goddess of Heavenly Yin. That was where the life soul was. Among the three souls, Heaven Soul and Earth Soul could be recovered using the power of Heaven Duke and Earth Count. However, in regards to the life soul, Qin Mu didn't have much research. His attainments in the However, if the top of the gate of heaven influence was heaven and the bottom was earth, the mortal world should be in the center. The mortal world was where life resides, so he planned to use both Heaven Duke and Earth Count's power at the same time to see if he could help Goddess of Heavenly Yin reconstruct her soul. Qin Mu found it harder and harder to hold on. No matter if it was his corporeal body or his primordial spirit, his magic power, or his spirit, they have all reached their limits. What made him gratified was the place where Heaven Duke and Earth Count's power were converging at. Goddess of Heavenly Yin's life soul was slowly gathering. He continued to endure, but his mind was already muddled. He wasn't a god, after all, and executing such a heaven-defying great divine art to change the life of a naturally born sacred god was truly betting his own life. Time passed by bit by bit. Finally, Goddess of Heavenly Yin's life soul was reconstructed. Qin Mu roused his remaining energy, and wanted to reconstruct her seven spirits, when his eyes blacked out. He lost control over his body and fell from the top of the tower. Great Wizard has helped me reconstruct my three souls. Heavenly Yin can't thank you enough. Qin Mu heard a very melodious voice beside his ears, and because he was too exhausted, he couldn't feel anything or see anything. Goddess of Heavenly Yin stretched out her hand and caught him in her palm. Much thank to Great Wizard for saving me. I'm born from heaven and earth, so I don't have three spirits. Founding Emperor God stood on the top of the tower and continued to use the life and death book. Goddess of Heavenly Yin said with a smile, "There's no need for that anymore, many thanks, Tao friend." The god immediately kept the life and death book, and took out his brush and paper to quickly write some words. Goddess of Heavenly Yin moved forward to take a look, and she said with a smile, "I don't have a corporeal body, and just having a skin doesn't mean I'm completely revived." The god changed another piece of paper and wrote some more. Goddess of Heavenly Yin said, "He doesn't have many problems, it's just that he exhausted too much vital qi and vitality. I have used water of Heavenly Yin and qi of Heavenly Qi to preserve his life. There's no need to worry." The god took out another piece of paper and quickly wrote before raising it high up. Goddess of Heavenly Yin said, "How do I solve the problem of having no corporeal body? I don't have any idea. I am born from heaven and earth, so I might be able to use earth of Heavenly Yin and water of Heavenly Yin to reconstruct my corporeal body. However, I'm helpless if you don't have flesh. Even though I can help you reconstruct your body, I can't reconstruct your divine treasures." The god's expression became dim. Goddess of Heavenly Yin lifted the tower and walked towards the sea. With a few steps, they came to the middle of the sea, and she let him float on the surface. She raised her hand gently to gather the winds and refined a strand of qi of Heavenly Yin. The strand of qi quickly entered the heart of Qin Mu's brows and flowed throughout his body. Goddess of Heavenly Yin grabbed another bunch of sea water which flowed through her fingers. What remained in the heart of her palm was a crystal-clear water droplet. Goddess of Heavenly Yin carefully placed a drop of water beside Qin Mu's lips. That water droplet seeped into Qin Mu's mouth and quickly dissolved, turning Qin Mu all misty as though a cloud enveloped him. Goddess of Heavenly Yin said with a smile, "Great wizard, wake up." Qin Mu felt a soothing feeling spreading throughout his entire body, and when he opened his eyes, he was lying on the surface of a sea. Goddess of Heavenly Yin's face covered up half of the sky. He immediately stood up, and he felt all of his fatigue vanishing without a trace. His vital qi was full, and he was full of vigor. His corporeal body also seemed to have boundless strength, which made him delighted and surprised. He stood on the sea and greeted the Goddess of Heavenly Yin. Qin family Junior Qin Mu pays respect to Goddess of Heavenly Yin. Great Wizard is too courteous. Goddess of Heavenly Yin bent down to let him jump on her palm. She said with a smile, "Great Wizard could actually gather my 3 souls back. You have given me a new lease on life, and I'm indebted to you. Heavenly Yin can't express how gratified I am. Son of Heaven Yin has turned my place upside down, and when I recover my corporeal body, I will right the wrong." Sea water flooded into her body, and the ground was also flowing to help reconstruct her bones. The corporeal body of Goddess of Heavenly Yin became more and more realistic, and her abilities were also rising furiously. "Does Great Wizard has any request?" Qin Mu's face blushed slightly, and he said, "Goddess, there's no need to call me Great Wizard. I'm not even a god, and I'm just trying my best. My research on the 3 souls is even inferior to Granny. You are worthy of the title." Goddess of Heavenly Yin said with a smile, "Not even Heaven Duke knows your divine art. So how could you be not worthy of the title Great Wizard?" Qin Mu blushed and gave some thoughts. "I'm from Eternal Peace, which is on the outside. May I ask if Eternal Peace can form an alliance with Goddess?" Goddess of Heavenly Yin said with a smile, "Of course." Qin Mu let out a sigh of relief and said, "Mingju has set up a point here to control the black sand and bring chaos to the mortal world. Would Goddess be able to control the flow of the black sand?" Goddess of Heavenly Yin shook her head. "I have just revived, and I still can't control the entire Heavenly Yin world yet. I don't have the power to control these particles of black sand." Her gaze was slightly cold. Even when a soul is being shattered to its smallest form and turned into black sand, the grains of black sand are still shattered pieces of the soul, and its fundamental attributes never changed. Do you know what this means? The corners of Qin Mu's eyes jumped as he saw countless ghosts squashing together, and in that kind of situation, they transformed into a huge body made of souls. The whole heavenly yin world was situated in the darkness, which meant that the entire heavenly yin world was an incomparably huge starved ghost. We are all in the stomach of this starved corpse. Goddess of heavenly yin said, "This is the method Son of Heaven Yin used. He will soon know that I have revived, and this incomparably huge starved ghost will awaken, attack me, and kill me again. However, he won't be able to succeed this time. I will fight him once more, and this time, I will let him know that the shade of heaven isn't a place he can step into." Special Episode Part 259. In the Qin word land, Heaven Duke, Crimson Emperor, and Old Buddha all had grim expression. After a moment, Old Buddha sighed and said, "The great Tao of heaven and earth has changed, from changing skills to changing paths. The great Tao of heaven and earth has evolved another step. Troubled times and huge changes in the world are about to come." His gaze gradually dimmed as he went back to sleep. The clone of Heaven Duke said with a sigh, "It has come so soon, looks like I will have to make preparations as well. On the other hand, Crimson Emperor can now relax since you've died." Crimson Emperor gave a dull grunt. We are all in the stomach of the starved corpse. Qin Mu's heart trembled violently, and his expression flickered. If that was the case, then the darkness that enveloped the great ruins was also the inconceivably huge starved ghost. The body of the starved ghost could fill up the entire great ruins, and fill up the worlds in the cliff. The most crucial point was that the starved ghost didn't have its own consciousness. Starved ghosts could have their own consciousness, and he realized that at Cheerful Village. Starved ghosts could have their own memories and their own thoughts. If Heavenly Yin world was truly transformed into a starved ghost by Son of Heaven Yin, in that case, even with Goddess of Heavenly Yin's resurrection, the situation wasn't that positive. Heavenly Yin world has transformed into a huge starved ghost, and to Goddess of Heavenly Yin, that is an incomparably terrifying opponent. If the Goddess of Heavenly Yin can't even take care of herself, how can she take care of the great ruins? He wasn't too confident about her situation. Goddess of Heavenly Yin held him in her palms and looked at him curiously. She saw Qin Mu's expression was flickering non-stop. This great wizard might have superior abilities, but his frame of mind seems to be a little weak. In just a short while, he had more than 10 expressions. It's like a rotating lantern that could change its colors affixed under his face. Her corporeal body was gradually recovering. The ability to transform earth and water into her flesh, blood, and bones was something that others could only be envious of. For example, even though Qin Mu had cultivated the undying God consciousness of Crimson Emperor, and Anusrava creation mysterious scripture of Light Emperor, having astonishing attainments in the arts of creation, if his flesh and blood dissolved and only his skin was left, Qin Mu was bound to die. He wouldn't be able to reconstruct his body. Other than possessing immense power, the reason why the Goddess of Heavenly Yin could do so was an innate talent that she was born with. This tower was created by me to suppress the starved ghosts, but they allied themselves with Son of Heaven Yin and schemed against me. Goddess of Heavenly Yin's body was incomparably huge, and she waded in the sea water as she walked into the sea, raising huge waves on the surface. Back then, when the starved ghosts in Heavenly Yin world were creating havoc, I had wanted to create a weapon that could help me solve the problem of the starved ghosts once and for all. However, since I was born from heaven and earth, I wasn't skilled in other divine arts, paths, and skills. I shut myself in seclusion to create a treasure, but I couldn't do it no matter what. That was when Son of Heaven Yin came to Heavenly Yin world and said he would help me. His spells were truly astonishing, and he walked the path of Yudu, which could complement what I lacked. With his help, I completed my tower. However, she came to the center of the sea, and her face dimmed. It was all a setup. He had ill intentions for helping me to create the treasure, and after my treasure was created, he hid a divine art inside. Goddess of heavenly yin gritted her teeth. He used this divine art to assassinate me and injured me. The starved ghosts then bore into my body and feasted in my flesh and blood. On the other hand, he brought a lot of strong practitioners and took the chance to attack me. More and more starved ghosts made their way into my body, and the black sand flooded continuously. Qin Mu could imagine how terrifying that sight was. Goddess of heavenly yin, who was injured, had to defend against the attacks from Son of Heaven Yin and numerous strong practitioners on one side and on the other. All the while, there were still countless starved ghosts that were boring into her wounds and feasting on her flesh, blood, and soul. At that time, the goddess of heavenly yin must have been extremely torn between the internal and external attacks. She must have been in complete despair. Why would goddess trust a stranger? He was puzzled. If goddess of heavenly yin had put her guard up against Son of Heaven Yin, she wouldn't have lost so miserably. Son of Heaven Yin should have been a stranger to goddess of heavenly yin at that time, so there was no reason for her to trust him without any reservation. She was too hasty. Goddess of heavenly yin blushed slightly and said, "He looked very handsome, so I couldn't put my guard up against him." Qin Mu looked at her with a weird expression. Goddess of heavenly yin immediately said, "I wasn't judging a book by its cover, but he was just really good looking, and I couldn't see through his pretense. He helped me create my treasure, and I had indeed needed help then, thus I was tricked. Only when I meet great wizard did I learn that good-looking people might not be good, and that plain-looking people can be very good people as well." She looked at Qin Mu, who was in her palm, and gave him an encouraging smile. Qin Mu grunted, and he didn't want to mention how she said he was plain-looking. "In that case, why didn't Son of Heaven Yin take away this tower of yours, but left it here instead?" Goddess of heavenly yin grabbed the huge hourglass and said, "He wanted to, but because my tower is constructed using the metal of heavenly yin, it belonged to me after refining. I merged this treasure into one with heavenly yin world, so he naturally couldn't lift it. Even though I died once, I also received blessings in the disguise of misfortune. In the past, I couldn't comprehend the particle form of the soul, so I was helpless against the black sand, but after I broke apart and turned into soul particles, what I couldn't solve in the past has naturally become clear to me." She took down the hourglass and said, "This hourglass is a treasure that controls the black sand of heavenly yin world. It should be his creation. This is what he used to control the black sand to attack your world." The hourglass that Son of Heaven Yin had created represented his achievements in the system of the soul. Just with an hourglass, he was able to control the black soul sand of heavenly yin world. Goddess of heavenly yin could pluck the hourglass down, which meant that she had truly received a blessing in disguise. Because she had died and revived, she had an extremely deep comprehension of the soul. Because she had died and revived, she was different from the other sacred beings like Earth Count and Heaven Duke. She had the ability to learn other divine arts and comprehend other paths and skills. That kind of transformation was very unique, and Qin Mu felt that there could be research done in the field, so he took out his booklet and recorded it down. He thought to himself, research in this field might just be able to help the sacred gods solve the problem of not being able to change with the Tao. I just don't know if Goddess of Heavenly Yin is willing to let thousands of experts that are proficient in algebra climb onto her body to research. I reckon she might not be willing. This hourglass is called Celestial Dipper. Even though the hourglass was extremely huge, it was like a small toy in Goddess of Heavenly Yin's hands. Goddess of Heavenly Yin played with it, and had a smile that was yet not a smile. His methods of creating treasures are much more profound than mine. This Celestial Dipper is very intricate, but after landing in my hands, he won't be able to take it back. Celestial Dipper will be my strongest method to deal with the starved ghosts in Heavenly Yin world. Qin Mu could see that goddess of heavenly yin had never dabbled into the affairs of the world before. She had only been in charge of managing heavenly yin world, and she wasn't concerned about hatching plots and being in contact with the outside world. Goddess of heavenly yin had understood how she could manipulate things, and that put him at ease. The goddess of heavenly yin that he had revived wouldn't be defeated easily by Mingju Black Deity anymore. He jumped down from goddess of heavenly yin's hand and came to the broken palaces. He picked up a few Yudu divine weapons that were still in good shape, and also took the heavenly funeral bell. Great wizard, you should go. Goddess of heavenly yin said, as she played with the hourglass. I can sense son of heaven yin coming from the celestial dipper. He will be trying to come here soon. When he had schemed against me, his abilities already weren't weak, and they should only be even stronger now. If you stay here, I can't protect you. Qin Mu was astonished and raised his head to ask, does goddess have the abilities to fight against him? Goddess of heavenly yin said, my corporeal body is still unstable now, so I can't defeat him. However, defending against his abilities is not a problem for me. I will block him outside heavenly yin world and make him unable to enter. As long as he can't enter, my life will be in no danger. However, he will definitely control the starved ghost of heavenly yin world to attack me, and that will be the time when heavenly yin world will erupt in chaos. If you stay, you definitely can't protect yourself. Qin Mu nodded his head and said solemnly, Goddess, take care. He was about to leave with the god of founding emperor, when he remembered something and stopped in his footsteps. Goddess, when I was trying to save you just now, I was attacked by the starved ghost that you had transformed into, and my sword pellet was destroyed. Now I don't have any weapon I can use. I wonder if goddess still has any leftover metal of heavenly yin from creating the tower. Could you give some to me? Goddess of heavenly yin gently scooped up the seabed, and when the sea water drained from her hand, he saw numerous grains of sand that were glowing with a green sparkle in her palm. This is the metal of heavenly yin. Do you have anything to store it in? Her palm had a radius of hundreds of fields, so the metal in her palm was like a green-colored desert. Qin Mu's heart beat wildly, and he exclaimed to himself at how generous she was. He took out his Daotai sack and said, my Daotai sacks are filled with Buddha Vitality Crimson Chromium and Plume Buddha Mother Tree, but there are still gaps that I can fill with sand. Your 2 sacks are too small, and you probably can't fill much. Goddess of heavenly yin shook her head, and let him jump onto her hand to store the metal of heavenly yin. Qin Mu immediately execute his Daotai sacks, to store the metal of heavenly yin into his Daotai sacks. Soon, he filled up both of the sacks. There was still half of the metal in goddess of heavenly yin's palm, that he didn't manage to store. Qin Mu sighed to himself in pity, and tied the 2 Daotai sacks around his waist with great difficulty. However, the sacks almost snapped his belt, so he could only carry them with his hands. There must be a certain method to smelt this metal. When goddess was creating your treasure, what fire did you use? Qin Mu asked again. I used the heavenly fire I had stolen from Heaven Duke of Xuandu. Goddess of heavenly yin flipped another hand, and a lump of fire appeared in her palm. She said, this is what I stole from Heaven Duke when he wasn't paying attention. It has no use to me now, so I'll just give it to you. Qin Mu looked at the flames in her palm. When that flame was burning, it was like a crystal that was sharp and clear-cut. However, it was simply too huge. It was literally a sea of fire that was formed by crystals. Goddess, I don't need so much. Qin Mu said in embarrassment. I have no place to store it anymore. Goddess of heavenly yin used 2 fingers to break off a small chunk of heavenly fire gently and handed it to him. Just carry it with you. Even though heavenly fire might sound scary, it isn't hot at all. You will need to activate it in order to have the power to incinerate everything. Qin Mu hugged this chunk of heavenly fire, and it was like hugging a crystal that had the shape of a prism. The heavenly fire was as thick as his waist and even taller than him. With the 2 Daotai sack, he was struggling to carry them. You should go. Goddess of heavenly yin focused her gaze in the distance, and she said with a grim expression, Son of heaven yin will be here soon. Qin Mu immediately took his leave and leaped down from Goddess of heavenly yin's hand. The god of founding emperor hurriedly followed after him, and he heard a plop. He was stunned and saw Qin Mu sinking into the sea, and he wasn't standing the sea surface, or flying up. Luckily for him, Goddess of heavenly yin fished him out of the sea, and blew a gentle breath on them. Qin Mu and the god instantly flew back on the path they had come from. They traveled tens of thousands of miles in a split second, and they reached the boundary stone of heavenly yin world. Only then did they landed on the ground. The god of founding emperor was about to cross the boundary stone when Qin Mu hurriedly said, Senior, wait a minute. The god of founding emperor was puzzled, and he saw Qin Mu placing down his Daotai sacks and the prism of heavenly fire. Qin Mu took over 10 and more jade bottles and poured the dragon saliva inside away. The god of founding emperor didn't know what he was trying to do. Qin Mu chanted phrases and executed a strange divine art. Black sand came flooding into the small jade bottles. Qin Mu tightened the cork and designed a series of strange rune markings around the vase. He opened up the god of founding emperor's shirt and placed the small jade bottles inside. You can't see the light after you go out, so when the day comes, the black sand will leave your body. I'm afraid you will die, so I collected some black soul sand. Once we are out, I will refine a treasure for you, which can keep your black soul sand in the treasure during the day and allow the black soul sand to enter your body at night. The god of founding emperor revealed a moved expression. And at that moment, violent tremors suddenly came from heavenly yin world. Son of heaven yin is here. Qin Mu was astonished and looked back. The god of founding emperor couldn't help feeling anxious and tugged him in a panic. He wanted him to leave heavenly yin world as soon as possible to prevent him from suffering an unneeded disaster. However, he didn't manage to move him. Qin Mu turned his head back, and he could faintly see the black sand in heavenly yin world suddenly becoming concentrated and violent. There were circular air currents in the air that were formed by the black sand, and they were as thick as dragons. They traveled back and forth among heaven and earth recklessly. Yet there was that kind of thing everywhere in heavenly yin world, and it made him unable to see far. Goddess, take care. Qin Mu knew he didn't even have the rights to observe the battle, and he picked up the 2 Daotai sacks, and hugged the prism of heavenly fire to get out with the god of founding emperor. They came to the long stretch that was in the mountain crack. The god of founding emperor swayed, and he was feeling faint. Qin Mu frowned, and his primordial spirit appeared behind him. He handed his Daotai sacks and the prism over to his primordial spirit, while he executed heavenly devil creation technique in great educational heavenly devil scriptures. Using his vital chi as needles, he tapped on the body of the god and said solemnly, "The seal teacher woodcutter placed on you is too much, it's suppressing too much of your soul. He didn't expect you to be weakened to such a state. Let me help you undo part of the seal." The speed at which he executed his spell was very fast, and the god of founding emperor felt much better. At that moment, he heard a gentle voice coming from heavenly yin world. "Goddess, long time no see." Qin Mu heard the voice, and his mind became muddled. He couldn't help being alarmed. Son of heaven yin's voice contains a divine art that can confuse the soul. He hurriedly pulled along the god, and they headed out while he tried to keep himself clear-headed. His primordial spirit followed behind them step for step. "Congratulations on dying and reviving, goddess. May I ask, where's the Tao friend that revived you?" Son of heaven yin's voice continued to ring out gently, and not only did it bring along a divine art that could mesmerize the soul, but there was also a feeling that he was a lover that understood them the most. Of course, it was ineffective against men. This Tao friend sure is remarkable, to actually create a kind of divine art that could gather the shattered souls once again. A person with such unmatched talent sure is worthy of being called my Tao friend, so I naturally had to visit him personally and seek to learn from him. Goddess, why don't you introduce him to me? Goddess of Heavenly Yin's voice sounded out, saying, that expert has already left. Son of Heaven Yin, you don't need to have evil designs on him. It's been a while since we have last met, so why don't we have a good talk? Her voice suddenly cleared Qin Mu's head, and when he looked around, he felt his blood run cold and his skin becoming cold and clammy. In front of him was the boundary stone of Heavenly Yin world. He had felt that he was following the crack out, but he didn't expect to actually return to the front of the Heavenly Yin world's boundary stone. It was obvious he had still fallen into the trap unintentionally, and he was mesmerized by Son of Heaven Yin's voice. He thought he was leaving, yet the divine art hidden in Son of Heaven Yin's voice had made him lose his sense of surrounding. As a result, he didn't even know he was turning back. If it weren't for Goddess of Heavenly Yin's voice that broke Son of Heaven Yin's divine again. Goddess of Heavenly Yin laughed. That's easy, that's easy. If there's a chance in the future, I will naturally introduce him to you. Her voice rang out, and Qin Mu immediately took the chance to sprint and broke the god of founding emperor out of the crack. Light came from their front, and Qin Mu leaped and gently landed on the rock door in front of the crack, before changing his direction to jump out of the broken cliff. Behind him, the god of founding emperor got shone on by the sunlight outside, and the black smoke poured out from his eyes, nose, ears, and mouth, turning him into human skin. Qin Mu kept holding onto his hand, and the human and skin came flapping down from the sky. Qin Mu's primordial spirit also rushed out of the crack, and floated down with them. Yang Jingjing, he and the rest were waiting at the broken cliff anxiously for a few days and nights. Supreme Emperor Heaven had already been bored through by Yang Jingjing, and the roads were paved, yet Qin Mu never appeared. That made them slightly worried. Yang Jingjing said, Fatty Dragon, did you really not see Brother Cowherd entering that crack? The dragon Qilin shook his head. I was taking a nap, and just as I heard Cult Master's words and planned to open my eyes to see where he was, I felt someone pressing down on my eyelids, so I didn't open my eyes. Right at that moment, Qin Mu suddenly brought a person and flew out from the cliff, surprising them. However, they immediately saw the person beside him opening his mouth to give off a miserable shriek, as black smoke spewed out of his face. When he finally turned into a piece of human skin, everyone was shocked. Qin Mu landed on the ground, and he was still holding on to the hand of the god. When he looked back and didn't see any abnormal activities, or hear the voices of Goddess of Heavenly Yin, and Son of Heaven Yin from the crack, only then did he let out a sigh of relief. Yang Jingjing looked at the limp skin of the god he was grabbing, and she couldn't help asking with a trembling voice, Brother Cowherd, the thing in your hand. Qin Mu hurriedly laid the skin of the god flat on the land and quickly rolled him up, as though he was rolling several pieces of clothing. This is a god of founding emperor era that I met in Heavenly Yin world. He was dispatched by teacher Woodcutter to enter Heavenly Yin world to scout the source of darkness. He has no corporeal body, and his soul is sealed in his skin. I'll roll him up first, and when night falls, he will return to normal. Heavenly Yin world. The source of the darkness. Yang Jingjing and he stared at him with their eyes wide open. They completely didn't understand what he had just said. Qin Mu took out a small rope, and tied the god of founding emperor properly. Fatty Dragon, keep him properly. Where's Fatty Dragon? The dragon Qilin had stuffed his head into a cave while his butt was exposed outside. He was shivering non-stop. Qin Mu shook his head and tied the god to his back. Is the tunnel done? He said, with Sister Jingjing's help, We have already dug out a tunnel through Supreme Emperor Heaven. This tunnel is very huge, and even the sun ship would be able to drive through. However, we will need to keep the suns first. This human skin. Her hair was also standing on end. Qin Mu said with a smile, "Don't be afraid. He's actually someone very easy to talk to. He's just like Grandpa Mute, they have many things to say." His primordial spirit walked forward and placed the prism of heavenly fire and Dao Tai sacks down. Qin Mu immediately took out some metal of heavenly yin. It's just that his current state is a little strange. When I create a container that could store the darkness for him, he will become normal. He will still be very strange. The two girls looked at each other in the eyes, and they could see each other's puzzlement. How could a human skin have many things to talk about? As talkative as Grandpa Mute. That was indeed very strange. Qin Mu took out a medium-sized smelting table from his Dao Tai sack, and placed the metal of heavenly yin on the table. He placed the prism of heavenly fire in the furnace and carefully controlled his vital qi to activate it. Suddenly, a burst of flames melted the entire smelting table, and nothing was left behind. Qin Mu stared with his eyes wide open and was helpless. In front of him, there was nothing left, and even the metal of heavenly yin was completely vaporized. Using this kind of flame to pave roads can make the process abnormally fast. Yang Jingjing said in delight. Fear could be seen in He's eyes, and she hurriedly shook her head. If this kind of fire is used carelessly, we will be incinerated until there's nothing left. Yang Jingjing was puzzled and said, then we can just control the heat. She said it like it was natural, and as though controlling the heat should be an extremely simple task. Qin Mu's heart stirred slightly, and he said, Sister Jing, this is the heavenly fire of Xuanju. I'm not as skilled as you in controlling the heat. Come and have a try. Yang Jingjing went up and used her vital qi to activate the prism of heavenly fire. The flame seemed to come alive and stretched its body to separate into various flames that had the shapes of crystal. It was very tranquil. Qin Mu carefully took out some more metal of heavenly yin, and controlled the sand-like metal, and placed it over the flames. The metal of heavenly yin slowly melted. Look, it's simple, right? Yang Jingjing said with a smile. Qin Mu was overjoyed, and he said with a smile, Sister Jing's ability to control fire is superior to others, even I'm far inferior. From today onwards, you can travel the streets with me to help people forge knives and sharpen their shears. You will be great no matter if it's to forge a ladle or a plough. He used the melted metal of heavenly yin to forge an incomparably intricate hourglass, and the hourglass even had the engravings of every hour. He then engraved numerous runes. The hourglass was very similar to Son of Heaven Yin's celestial dipper, but it was only an imitation. The circulation system that Son of Heaven Yin had set up was more complete. The black soul sand was circulating in the great ruins, Heavenly Yin world, and all the other worlds. Qin Mu had planned to use metal of heavenly yin to create an hourglass to store some black soul sand and let the black soul sand flow to and fro between the body of the god and the hourglass. In that way, a small circulation system would be formed, and as long as there was no mistake in the engraved time, the god of founding emperor would be able to swap between human skin and human form during day and night. Metal of heavenly yin was a divine metal from heavenly yin world, and one of the few things that could store the black sand, therefore it was best to use that kind of divine metal. Qin Mu then crafted a small tray, and the tray was crafted with numerous gears and components to show the time accurately. The calibration was according to when the sun rose and set, it wasn't according to the daily hours. Furthermore, every gear was imprinted with a rune, and the rune would resonate with the god to maintain the circulation system. In that way, a small circulation system of heavenly yin world would be formed. After he had created it, he placed the hourglass on the tray and continued to refine the two smaller treasures. In the end, they were only 2 to 3 inches tall and were extremely delicate. Qin Mu forged another ring, and he stuck the hourglass in the center of the ring. It was like a slightly bigger pendant, and he just needed to craft a chain to hang it around the god of founding emperor's neck. In that way, the circulation system could be maintained. After he finished forging it, he let out a sigh of relief and stretched his back. Yang Jingjing took over this strangely shaped necklace, and other than having a certain use, it was also beautiful to look at and made it so people couldn't bear to let it go. Qin Mu turned around to look at the cliff and thought to himself, I wonder how's the battle between Son of Heaven Yin and Goddess of Heavenly Yin going? If Goddess of Heavenly Yin can't block Son of Heaven Yin outside of Heavenly Yin world, she probably can't escape death. In Heavenly Yin world, a gigantic woman was standing on the center of the sea and executing an immeasurably tall tower to fight with Son of Heaven Yin across the worlds. Special Episode Part 260. Two strong practitioners possessed abilities on Emperor's throne fighting with spells. The spells and divine arts used were boundless and straightforward, as their offense and defense had the principles of the Great Tao, is the simplest and the easiest. There weren't many transformations needed in the divine art to unleash a power that countless divine arts practitioners and gods couldn't reach. It was the divine art of the realm of the path, simple, effective, and no unnecessary transformation. Qin Mu's opening calamity sword was the symbol of his sword skill entering the path. However, Qin Mu had only comprehended one move, and after he executed it, no other sword skill could follow up. On the other hand, it was extremely simple for Goddess of Heavenly Yin and Son of Heaven Yin. Even though they were fighting across worlds, their attacks were brilliant and varied, and there was rarely a repeated move. The emperor that was fighting with Goddess of Heavenly Yin looked like how she had described. He was a cultured and refined man, and even though he had the lofty quality of an emperor, it wasn't overbearing and tyrannical at all. He looked very handsome, with big eyes that were long and narrow. They were like the eyes of a phoenix. His beard was like an inverted V, which made him quite appealing. He was Son of Heaven Yin, the one who had schemed against Goddess of Heavenly Yin back then, and controlled Heavenly Yin world in one fell swoop. Even though Goddess has died for so many years, it looks like it was a blessing in disguise. Son of Heaven Yin fought for a long time, and he could never break into Heavenly Yin world. So he suddenly said with a smile, your comprehension of Tao now has surpassed what it was before. Fighting you across the worlds, I truly can't do anything to you. So I can only make do with tricks. The wind and clouds suddenly changed and countless black sand flooded over from all the worlds into Heavenly Yin world. Countless monsters transformed from starved ghosts sprinted furiously towards Goddess of Heavenly Yin, and at that moment, starved ghosts were running on the entire sea. Not only that, the black soul sand in Heavenly Yin world pressed down on Goddess of Heavenly Yin altogether, as the huge starved ghost of Heavenly Yin world was about to awaken. No light could be seen in Heavenly Yin world as it sank into utter darkness. Goddess of Heavenly Yin gave a gentle laugh, and she suddenly threw up Celestial Dipper. Celestial Dipper spun furiously in the sky, and the entire Heavenly Yin world was also spinning. The sea whooshed and flipped over the sky, and the land hung over their head, turning the sky into an empty land. Countless starved ghosts flailed as they got thrown into the air. Heaven and earth were flipped again, and they came smashing down ruthlessly once more. The spinning heaven and earth moved the whole Heavenly Yin world and threw the starved ghosts around. They couldn't attack Goddess of Heavenly Yin at all, and the black soul sand broke apart from the vibrations. The starved ghosts of Heavenly Yin world couldn't attack Goddess of Heavenly Yin at all. Son of Heaven Yin sighed, and he slowly faded in the darkness of Mingju. You have indeed jumped out of the shackles of a natural-born sacred god, and even learned my paths, skills, and divine arts from my Celestial Dipper. I'm even more curious about that Tao friend that revived you. Who is he exactly to manage such an astonishing feat? His face gradually sank into darkness and vanished. However, you are still unable to subdue starved ghost and subdue heavenly yin world. He was a person who knew how to retreat. When he realized he couldn't suppress goddess of heavenly yin with the starved ghosts, he immediately stopped wasting his effort and preserved his strength instead. Goddess of heavenly yin let out a sigh of relief and used a finger to tap on the celestial dipper gently. The celestial dipper that was spinning in the sky gradually stopped, and at that moment, heavenly yin world pressed down on goddess of heavenly yin once again. What should I do to slay this huge starved ghost in heavenly yin world and let heavenly yin world fall back into my control? Goddess of heavenly yin couldn't help being plagued with worries. Even though she could stop son of heaven yin's invasion, heavenly yin world still wouldn't be back in her control. The one that controlled heavenly yin world was still son of heaven yin. Unless she could solve the predicament of heavenly yin world, then, otherwise, it would be hard for her to seize back heavenly yin world. Meanwhile, heavenly yin world's predicament was that it didn't belong to the two zones that were under the jurisdiction of Earth Count and Heaven Duke. Heavenly yin world was independent and transcendent yet full of dangers. There were starved ghosts that were hungry at all times, and they would eat all life. As long as heavenly yin world remained in Heaven Duke's shadow, heavenly yin world's predicament would always remain. There would still be starved ghosts everywhere, and there would be starved ghosts swallowing everything. What exactly is the crux to solving the problem of the starved ghost? Goddess of heavenly yin sat beside the sea, and she stroked her chin in utter boredom. The tower stood tall and suppressed the abnormal situation in heavenly yin world as she pondered. If I'm unable to solve this problem, I will always be alone. Other than me, other life forms in heavenly yin world wouldn't be able to survive. Unless I could let life forms survive in heavenly yin world, only then would the predicament be solved. If only Great Wizard were here, maybe he would have an idea. She pondered strenuously. The starved ghosts were the source of heavenly yin world's predicament. The current her was no longer a perfect, sacred god that was born from nature, so she could learn other divine art. Maybe she would be able to find a solution. If the difficult question of the starved ghosts wasn't solved, she could only guard there. Otherwise, if she left, son of heaven yin would take the chance to sneak in and seize heavenly yin world away. She would become homeless. At the source of the surging river in the Great Ruins, Qin Mu didn't have goddess of heavenly yin's troubles. Despite goddess of heavenly yin and son of heaven yin's battle across the worlds and the numerous flips that happened in heavenly yin world, nothing had affected the Great Ruins. Although Celestial Dipper could control the invasion of the darkness, it was day in the Great Ruins, and the darkness couldn't invade the Great Ruins during the day. How do we know if goddess of heavenly yin has won or lost? He was slightly worried and asked. If we have to enter heavenly yin world to investigate, it's good if goddess of heavenly yin won, but if goddess of heavenly yin lost, we would just be walking right into a trap. Qin Mu looked at the cliff and said, we will wait until the sky becomes dark. If the goddess has won, there might not be any more darkness invading the Great Ruins. If she lost, the darkness will continue. Yang Jingjing sat beside him and watched the cliff with him. Qin Mu continued to say, Goddess of heavenly yin's victory and defeat doesn't concern only the fate of heavenly yin world and the Great Ruins. I feel it also concerns the fate of all of the worlds. The Black Soul Sand is occupying heavenly yin world, and if the Black Soul Sand of heavenly yin world can't be solved completely, there will be more and more Black Soul Sand in the heaven and earth. I'm afraid the starved ghosts will rule all of the worlds. When that time comes, son of heaven yin would be the ruler of all the worlds. Yang Jingjing and he couldn't help shuddering. They had already heard Qin Mu talk about his experiences in heavenly yin world, and they also knew about the origin of the Black Soul Sand and starved ghosts. The black sand was produced when souls scattered in pieces. Starved ghost was a kind of undying evil spirit formed by black sand. They remained starving and only knew how to swallow and slaughter. If the broken souls in all of the worlds became greater and greater in number, more and more black soul sand would form, and they would turn into starved ghosts that couldn't be killed. No matter if it were divine arts practitioners or normal humans, they would find it hard to defend against the invasion of the starved ghosts. If Son of Heaven Yin controlled the ghosts, even gods and devils couldn't be a match for him. If it continued, all of the worlds would sink, and all of the life forms would be wiped out. All of the worlds would fall back into silence and darkness. Can Goddess solve the black soul sand and the starved ghosts? Yang Jingjing said, Son of Heaven Yin is Mingju Black Deity, and he's very powerful. I wonder if the Goddess of Heavenly Yin can defeat him. If she isn't a match for Black Deity, there will be no plans to discuss. Goddess of Heavenly Yin died tens of thousands of years ago. She couldn't be a match for Son of Heaven Yin. However, if Son of Heaven Yin wants to kill her, he will have to descend into Heavenly Yin world personally. Qin Mu said, as long as he can't attack his way into Heavenly Yin world, Goddess of Heavenly Yin can still block him, there won't be a problem. He said anxiously, even if Goddess of Heavenly Yin manages to defend against her opponent, she probably can't deal with the starved ghosts. If she has a way, Heavenly Yin world wouldn't have a problem, and she wouldn't have been eaten up by them. Qin Mu said, the problem in Heavenly Yin world is small. She will definitely be able to think of a solution. Yang Jingjing's eyes sparkled, and she looked at him curiously. If it's you, how would you solve it? Very simple, the starved ghosts are afraid of the sun, and as long the sun comes out in the great ruins, the starved ghosts would retreat along with the darkness to hide into the other worlds, or Heavenly Yin world. This shows that the starved ghosts can't see sunlight. Qin Mu said, as long as she hangs a sun in Heavenly Yin world, she can definitely suppress the starved ghosts into obedience. If the sun continues shining night and day, she will be able to suppress the starved ghosts to one corner of Heavenly Yin world. In that way, they wouldn't be able to create havoc in Heavenly Yin world. Yang Jingjing stared with her eyes wide open. So simple. Looks like Goddess will definitely be able to think of this idea. Qin Mu nodded his head naturally. Goddess is very clever, and even if she can't find a sun, she can still pierce the wall to steal a light. As long as she drills a hole on the soul of Heaven Duke, she will be able to borrow light from Heaven Duke. Yang Jingjing couldn't help laughing. How painful would that be? Heaven Duke won't be willing. I feel Heaven Duke would be willing, even if he isn't, he can't do anything about it. Why? He can't find Heavenly Yin world. Qin Mu said, furthermore, if there's a hole on his soul, his light will be able to shine into Heavenly Yin world and Heavenly Yin world would become part of Xuanju. There won't be the shade of heaven anymore, and he would have one lesser flaw. However, if that happens, Heavenly Yin world will probably cease to exist. He continued to look at the cliff with a calm expression. These two methods I said aren't solving the chaos of the starved ghosts at its root, it's merely treating the symptoms, but not the root cause. To truly solve the chaos of the starved ghosts have to be destroyed. The Life and Death book that Son of Heaven Yin made also can't do it. The Life and Death book can't wipe out the starved ghosts and the black sand. The black soul sand and the starved ghosts originate from the shade of heaven, so the only one that could deal with the black sand and the starved ghosts is Goddess of Heavenly Yin. The two women nodded their heads gently. The day seemed to stretch out forever, and the sun seemed to be hanging in the west, unwilling to go down the mountain. When everyone was anxious from waiting, the sun began to fall below the horizon slowly. Qin Mu looked nervously at the broken cliff, and he saw darkness spewing out from the broken cliff. The darkness quickly flooded them and swept throughout the entire great ruins. Qin Mu's heart sank. Goddess has lost. Right at that moment, the human skin beside him suddenly broke free from the restraints and stretched out. The god of founding emperor inflated and looked around curiously. Yang Jingjing was shining with divine light to block the invasion of the darkness. When she looked at Qin Mu's face, she saw that his expression was dim, and he seemed to be sad and depressed. The god of founding emperor looked at his neck, and he saw a strange necklace hanging there. There was also a wooden tablet beside him, and beside the tablet was a charcoal pencil. What happened? The god of founding emperor wrote on the wooden tablet, and raised it to ask. Qin Mu didn't say anything, and the god raised his wooden tablet again. How did the battle go? Who won? Qin Mu sighed and walked into the darkness by himself. The god was in a daze, and he raised his tablet and asked, "What have I missed?" No one replied to him. He still wanted to raise his tablet, when Qin Mu's body trembled slightly, when he was in the darkness. His eyes lit up, and he said with a smile, "There are very few starved ghosts in the darkness." Yang Jingjing, he and the god of founding emperor was stunned, and Yang Jingjing was about to say something when the god had already raised his wooden tablet. What do you mean? This person really talks a lot. Yang Jingjing and he were astonished. If he wasn't writing on a wooden tablet, and was opening his mouth to speak instead, the others probably couldn't even cut into the conversation at all. Qin Mu stood in the darkness and looked around. He still saw some starved ghosts in the darkness, but there weren't a large number of them. What he could see were only some starved ghosts that were floating around aimlessly. Of course, the starved ghosts were still extremely dangerous. Their speed was too fast, and if any ordinary person walked into the darkness, the ghosts would devour them completely. The darkness was still around, but the number of starved ghosts had decreased. That meant that the battle between Goddess of Heavenly Yin and Son of Heaven Yin had ended. Son of Heaven Yin didn't manage to enter Heavenly Yin world successfully and kill Goddess of Heavenly Yin. His control over Heavenly Yin world had weakened, and that resulted in the number of starved ghosts decreasing. Goddess of Heavenly Yin must have suppressed the other starved ghosts in Heavenly Yin world. That outcome greatly roused Qin Mu's spirit, and he said, "Wait here for me. I'll go into Heavenly Yin world to take a look." All right. Before he could say anything, Yang Jingjing replied firmly, "Be careful." Qin Mu flew towards the crack that led to Heavenly Yin world, and he asked with a soft voice, "Sister Jingjing, why did you let him go to such a dangerous place by himself? You are a god, wouldn't it be safer if you tag along?" Yang Jingjing shook her head and explained, "His abilities are extremely high, and he will be able to escape if he encounters any danger. If we follow him, we will only serve as a distraction. What's more, if we really encounter Son of Heaven Yin, even I am useless as a god." He thought through her words and looked deeply into her eyes. Qin Mu quickly moved forward through the crack in the mountain, and he only came to the boundary stone of Heavenly Yin world after a long while. He looked around and saw a tower suppressing in mid-air, warping the space of Heavenly Yin world with the pressure. It was like an iron ball that was pressing down on a firm mattress. The place where the tower was suppressing no longer had any starved ghosts, and countless starved ghosts shivered at the horizon from the pressure. The once dimmed sky had also cleared up, but it was still not very bright. Qin Mu let out a sigh of relief and continued forward. He finally found the goddess that was having a headache on the seashore. Goddess of Heavenly Yin sat there and with her palms propping up her head. She stared at the sea in utter boredom while soaking her feet in the sea water, which was only able to reach up to her ankles. She didn't have any physical clothes on her, and only used streamers formed from divine lights to cover her body. It had the feeling of unruliness and wildness that an ancient god possessed. Qin Mu walked forward and sat on the beach. He learned from her and put his feet into the sea, and a huge wave suddenly splashed over, drenching him completely. Goddess of Heavenly Yin burst into laughter and said, "You are too small." The fight between Son of Heaven Yin and me just now had caused the waves in the sea to become very big. Qin Mu grumbled and asked with a smile, "Is Goddess worrying about the starved ghosts and the darkness?" Goddess of Heavenly Yin placed her arms down. She propped her arms behind her as she raised her head to look at the sky. "I don't want to be alone. I want this place to be as bustling as Xuandu. Xuandu is very lively, and numerous gods have built houses on Heaven Duke's body. Many life forms lived on the land on Heaven Duke's body, and they have pleasant weather. Their lives are joyous and harmonious. Even Earth Count has countless ghosts living in his horns, yet I only have starved ghosts and a dark world here. The starved ghosts are silly, and they only know how to eat." Qin Mu pondered, and another huge wave rushed over. The youth quickly used his vital qi to defend, and only then did he not get drenched again. "Goddess, to solve the current situation in Heavenly Yin world, we might need Heaven Duke's help." He explained his strategy of treating the symptoms, and Goddess of Heavenly Yin shook her head. "If we steal a sun to hang here, Shade of Heaven will become a part of Xuandu. If Heavenly Yin world ceases to exist, how am I going to be on the same standing as Heaven Duke? Won't I become his girl servant? He will definitely be unwilling if I drill a hole through his soul, and I'm unwilling as well. The blood of his smelly feet will flow to my place." Qin Mu speechless before bursting into laughter. "I have a life and death book here, maybe Goddess will be able to comprehend Son of Heaven Yin's divine arts." Son of Heaven Yin's divine arts also treats the symptoms, but not the root cause. It's not useful. Goddess of Heavenly Yin shook her head and explained, "I want my Heavenly Yin world to have living life forms. Even though Son of Heaven Yin's abilities are good, he also can't solve the problem of the starved ghosts." Qin Mu's head was starting to ache, and he said with a smile, "The wisdom of one man isn't enough, Goddess. Wait here for several days. Let me go and invite some people with extraordinary wisdom, and we just might be able to find a method to solve the problem of the starved ghosts and the black soul sand." Goddess of Heavenly Yin was astonished. "There are still people that are more intelligent than you in this world." Qin Mu was extremely serious, and he said with a deep voice, "Goddess is joking, of course there are people that are smarter than me. I'm very dumb. So how can I dare to praise myself for being the number one in the world? There are still 1, 2, 4 to 5 people that are smarter than me." Goddess of Heavenly Yin looked at his expression and chuckled. "All right, you can go find them. I would like to see the 4 to 5 people that are smarter than you." Qin Mu said with a smile, "They are the pillars of eternal peace's reform, and there's also King Yama of Fengdu. Goddess will definitely be shocked." He was about to project his primordial spirit, when he remembered something and moved several steps back, before executing secrets of 3 primordial spirit assembly. Goddess of Heavenly Yin looked at him curiously, and saw that Qin Mu's primordial spirit had already left his body and Heavenly Yin world. He is so reassured that the starved ghosts won't eat his body. Goddess of Heavenly Yin chased away the starved ghosts that got attracted by the smell and thought to herself. In Hall of Supreme Learning in Imperial College, numerous primordial spirits came from the invitation and appeared in the hall. "What's the matter, Cult Master?" Sai Yunxiang asked. "I need to find Imperial Preceptor, Saint Woodcutter, Shu Xinghua, and First Ancestor." Qin Mu quickly said, "I'll have to trouble everyone here to find them and get them to head to the broken cliff that is at the source of the surging river. It's important. Also, get them to invite King Yama and a few strong practitioners skilled in the spells of souls when they pass by Fengdu. Cult Master, don't worry, we will find them in a short while." Everyone kept their primordial spirits back, and not long later, Qin Mu's primordial spirit returned to his corporeal body. He saw Goddess of Heavenly Yin looking at him curiously, with her beautiful black eyes. "Have you contacted them?" Goddess of Heavenly Yin was astonished when she saw him waking up so quickly. Qin Mu said with a smile, "Goddess, don't worry, they will be here in a few days." "Goddess, I'll be creating a sword pellet outside. I'll be back in a few days. Goddess of Heavenly Yin nodded, and Qin Mu immediately left. Under the broken cliff, he led all the women of his family to continue paving the roads, while Yang Jingjing helped Qin Mu control the heavenly fire to smelt Buddha Vitality Crimson Chromium and Metal of Heavenly Yin. Buddha Vitality Crimson Chromium had intense Buddha nature, and when refined in a treasure, it would shine brightly with Buddha rays. It was mainly monks that used that kind of divine metal to create their weapons. Metal of Heavenly Yin was a material to forge soul artifacts, and that kind of divine metal could contain souls, so it was very compatible with the primordial spirit. However, when executing that kind of spirit weapon, the ghostly atmosphere released was something that couldn't be helped. The reason why Goddess of Heavenly Yin had to steal the heavenly fire from Heaven Duke was to refine away the ghostly atmosphere. However, Qin Mu planned to use the Buddha rays in the crimson chromium and the ghostly atmosphere in Metal of Heavenly Yin to counter each other. In that way, he wouldn't keep on becoming akin to a monk, or have a ghostly atmosphere every time he executed his spirit weapon. He and Yang Jingjing first tested out the ratio between the two kinds of divine metal. Other than to harmonize the two kinds of divine metal, he also had to find the best hardness and flexibility. Qin Mu tested over 100 times, and he finally found the golden ratio. He immediately starting smelting and hammer his sword pellet. Yang Jingjing looked at him hammering one flying sword after another, and it looked very complicated. She was bewildered and asked, "Brother Cowherd, I've seen the swords you had refined, and you could refine the swords until they were like flowing water. They were refined to the extent where they could transform at will. If that is the case, why are you still forging sword by sword? If you just forge the divine metal into the extent where sword flows like water, would that save you the trouble of forging 8,000 flying swords?" Qin Mu focused on forging the flying sword in his hands and said, "The rune imprinted on every flying sword is different, and the runes have to be compatible with my Overlord Body 3 elixir technique. Only then can the sword agree perfectly with me. This is why I need to ensure the runes on every sword are correct." His body suddenly trembled, and he stopped forging. He fell into a daze. Yang Jingjing looked at him curiously, and saw the expression Qin Mu gradually becoming serious. It then slowly transformed from serious to relaxing and delighted before turning into a look of deep thought. In just a short while, there were over 10 different expressions. "You're right." Qin Mu clapped his hands and laughed loudly. "You're right. I seek to forge every flying sword perfectly and imprint the runes of my technique on them accurately, but this method is too complicated. I can indeed refine a lump of divine metal, and refine the lump of divine metal into my sword pellet." He suddenly hugged Yang Jingjing and wanted to lift her up to swing a few rounds, but he gave off a grunt instead. His waist had almost snapped. Yang Jingjing was a god on the god realm, and even though her body looked small and delicate, her weight was truly astonishing. Qin Mu was still on celestial being realm, so it was truly a dream if he wanted to carry her up to spin around. Yang Jingjing blushed and secretly executed her magic power to make herself lighter. Only then was Qin Mu able to continue his excitement and carry her up to spin 2 rounds. If I forge them one by one, I will have to spend time to consider how to spread each rune on each sword, and I need to separate my own technique into 8,000 parts. I've messed up by researching too much into algebra, and forgot about the simplest method. Qin Mu put her down and walked to and fro happily. "I can just forge a sword pellet." "No, I can just for a sword." "That's not right. I can just forge a ball. This ball will be my sword, my knife, and all of my spirit weapons. It is also my Overlord Body 3 elixir technique." He couldn't contain his excitement, and quickly took out all of his Buddha Vitality Crimson Chromium and Metal of Heavenly Yin. He smelted the divine metal together into a huge ball that was 4,000 feet tall. Qin Mu waited for the huge divine metal ball to cool and tried to carry it up, only to realize he couldn't move the ball a centimeter. It was truly like an ant trying to shake a tree. Yang Jingjing went forward and couldn't move it at all. Both of them looked at each other in dismay. Qin Mu's face was slightly red. Yang Jingjing helped him control the heavenly fire to slice a piece and asked, "Can you lift this piece?" Qin Mu tried and said with a red face, "It's still too heavy." Yang Jingjing controlled the heavenly fire to slice another chunk down. Qin Mu raised the divine metal, but it was still slightly strenuous. He said with a smile, "I can lift it now. When my cultivation increases and my corporeal body becomes stronger, it won't be as strenuous." Yang Jingjing helped him treat the chunk of divine metal into a ball, and the divine metal ball was about the height of a small mountain. Qin Mu executed his 300-foot primordial spirit to help him temper the ball and struck the runes transformed from his technique in. With his rune markings as the hammer, he hammered the spirit weapon. His primordial spirit tempered the divine metal for 1 day and 1 night, yet there were no signs of the divine metal ball being refined at all. Qin Mu was also flying around the divine metal ball and imprinting different runes along with his primordial spirit. After doing that for 2 to 3 days, the divine metal ball finally became slightly smaller. "Brother Cowherd, why don't we forge them one by one?" Yang Jingjing couldn't resist saying, "This method of forging wastes much more time instead." Qin Mu shook his head and said, "If I want to forge 8,000 swords, I would need a manufacturing factory to finish them in a short time. It would take much more energy and time to do it by myself. Furthermore, the manufacturing factories in Eternal Peace are designed by me, and it's still quite strenuous for them to treat divine metal." As he was saying that, Saint Woodcutter's voice rang out. "I've already redesigned the manufacturing factory. It's no longer strenuous to treat divine metal." Qin Mu looked towards the source of the voice, and he saw Saint Woodcutter, Eternal Peace Empire, First Ancestor Human Emperor, and Xu Xinghua walking out of Supreme Emperor Heaven's tunnel. Behind them, shadows were changing, and a cover of darkness was moving along with them. King Yama was cloaked in a cape of darkness, and completely covered in the shade. First Ancestor Human Emperor raised his head to look up at the 300 yards sword pellet, and was slightly stunned. He shook his head and said, "Who forges a sword pellet this way? This is so barbaric. Don't you have your own sword pellet?" "It got shattered." Qin Mu said with a smile, "Teacher, I found the source of the darkness." Everyone's hearts trembled, and Saint Woodcutter's expression also changed drastically. He cried out, "You found Heavenly Yin World. You found Goddess of Heavenly Yin. I've invited everyone over is to solve the final problem of Heavenly Yin World and Goddess of Heavenly Yin." Qin Mu took out the skin of the god of founding emperor and laid him out. "Teacher, do you still recognize him?" This video will end here.